we're ready to go live, yeah. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. The usual preamble. So this scrutiny meeting is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021, which will operate alongside the Council's standing orders. The Council's standing orders and code of conduct apply at all times during this virtual meeting in the same way as ordinary meetings, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. I remind members this meeting is being streamed to the public. To attempt to improve the debate, we're going to trial members keeping their cameras on. Please keep your camera on and mute your microphones when you're not speaking to ensure there is no unnecessary background noise. And I also remind members to ensure their chat function is switched on and to use that facility to indicate to me if you wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so, and remember to unmute your microphone. A recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recording may be used for training purposes within the council. Thank you very much. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
Councillors and Cleverly and Councillor Richard.
Noted. Thanks, Neil. Any declarations of interest from any members?
To declare that for the second part, a lot of the facilities and amenities which are mentioned in the cultural strategy are taking place in my ward town.
Yeah, I think that's fine, Kate, to be honest, because on the highways, we've all got highways in our ward, so I think the sort of general declaration is fine. Okay, so our first item on the agenda is the Highways Asset Management Plan 2024 to 2029. So we've got an officer presentation first, so hopefully that will give us a bit of background and context. The cabinet member's also here, so I'll invite the cabinet member to introduce, should she so wish, and then pass over to the officers for their presentation. Then we'll open up to the committee for questions thereafter, if everyone's agreeable. Is that okay?
Okay.
Over to you.
Thank you, Chair.
No problem.
Okay, so this is the Highways Asset Management Plan that's going to stretch 2024 to 2029. So that replaces our previous Highways Asset Management Plan. You'll probably see if you've looked at the previous one that we've changed the format slightly. We've updated it a bit. You know, I know it was delayed in coming to scrutiny, but that was because we wanted to make it as user-friendly as possible, and that involved some tweaks to the formatting to make sure that each asset type had, you know, all the types of figures that you would want in each subsection. So now there's, I think, a really helpful table in each subsection that explains all the finance breakdowns, all the issues, you know. So I think it's now a really helpful and user-friendly document. Hopefully that has come across in reading it. But obviously, after the presentation, we're all happy to take any questions you've got.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just to say, so Stephen Andrew will run us through the presentation. Yeah, it is a lot more user friendly. However, it is quite a dry topic. It's an important topic though. So just to get it into context, because all of you and myself, we're constantly complaints about states of roads, stuff, but same would be same in every council across the land. But we'll talk about lots of numbers in a minute. But the key big numbers is the highway asset that we're responsible for. Has a value of £1.3 billion. It's a massive asset. So when we talk about numbers in the context, they're of a chunk of £1.3 billion. So you soon start eating up cash. The numbers we give for all the things that we still need doing, which is sort of outstanding, is about 118 million. And so when we talk about spending millions each year, you've got to see it in that context, because it's a big old beast. And even though we're investing now, and we need potential more investment into roads, it's a real challenge even just to keep them where they are. So, Steve and Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so just as our monthly presentation then, so yes, the Highways Asset Management Plan we're bringing to you today. Slide, please. So yeah, just to briefly introduce what it is and how it is. So the HAMP details how we approach our highways structure in a sort of strategic manner and sets up over a period of years. So the HAMP is produced by Newport City Council, so we don't do it, but we work with County Surveyors Society of Wales, and they take consultancy XP and help us put the HAMP together. As Councillor Howell said, we have changed it this year to introduce some other aspects to the HAMP, which we feel does make it more sort of user-friendly document and give some useful information. You know, for example, the graphs that are shown in each subsection, each asset class. We did the original version of the HAMP, so we've included those as a way of explaining, trying to explain the nature of the assets to people. So strategic document, and that's how we say the guys are. So why do we produce it? So we're ensuring the strategic approach is taken and to base decisions we make on sound engineering and financial footings. Things around it then, make sure we're evidence-led. We do take a risk-based approach to how we invest in the asset. Because what we want is maintaining the asset in a serviceable, functional state. Improvements where we can for today and into the future. So that I'll hand on to Andrew, who will speak to the asset classes.
Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Thanks, Stephen. The highways asset is made up of the following: carriageways, footways, subways, bridges, retaining walls, culverts, streetlights, signalised junction, pedestrian crossings, gullies, signs, bollards, and items of street furniture. As you can see, this is a sizable asset which needs to be maintained to ensure it's safe at all times for its users, including pedestrians, vehicles, public transport, businesses, and active travel. Next slide, please. What is the value of the highways asset? The value to replace the asset is estimated to be 1.3 billion, which does not include the SDR, which is a PFI project for maintaining and adopted roads. Let's pick a few of the large figures from the table above. Street lighting to replace the asset is just over 26 million. Structures, 285 million. Footways, just under 109 million. Carriageways, just over 722 million. As you can appreciate, an asset estimated to be worth 1.3 billion needs to be maintained. Next slide, please. Investment in the asset. How much funding is required to maintain an asset of this size with a number of different elements? Steady state is the amount of yearly investment to maintain the asset to its current form. No improvements, just under 6.5 million. The backlog is the amount of investment required to bring the asset to a serviceable level, not new, just under 119 million. This figure in 2023 was 103 million. Therefore, due to the lack of funding, the backlog figure for 2 years has increased by 16 million. A capital investment budget for the highway was historically 500k. This has now increased to £1 million per year. Also, we seek to secure additional capital funding whenever grant opportunities become available. Next slide, please. Before I get into the detail about current condition of the asset, I think it's worth understanding how the data is collected for carriageways. We commissioned an external company to undertake what we call the scanner service condition assessment for the national network of roads. This perfect design vehicle has a number of lasers within the front attachment will measure longitudinal, transverse, and texture depth profiles of the road. The information collected, the condition of the carriageway can be calculated and categorized into red, amber, and greens for the ingredients good condition. Next slide, please. A carriageway asset, 721 kilometres, carriageway can be broken down into the following: A's, B's, and C's, which account for 259 kilometres. These primary routes are heavily trafficked and tend to deteriorate quickly due to the usage. U's account for about 462 kilometres. These routes are urban residential streets, including rural lanes, and tend not to be highly trafficked, therefore will deteriorate at a slower rate compared to A's and B's. Next slide, please. Carriageway condition. This is an interesting slide. This information is collected from the scanner survey, gives a percentage of the overall poor performance of the carriageway condition. Looking at A roads, since 2021-22, to now, you can see the poor conditions increased from 2.1% to 4.3%, doubled. Look at A's and B's add together. The poor condition of the asset equates to about 19 kilometres. On the use since 2021-23, poor condition has increased by 0.5%, which does seem low. However, the poor position of 6% equates to just under 28 kilometres. The next two slides will look at different assets we maintain. Next slide, please. Carriageway condition backlog. Remember I mentioned steady state and backlog? Steady state is the amount of yearly investment to maintain the asset to its current form, no improvements. Backlog is the amount of investment required to bring the asset to a serviceable level, not new. Therefore, to maintain a steady state of carriageways, a budget of 2.4 million per year is required. Budget of 2.4 million was spent on the carriageway per year. Then year zero carriageways were projected across the graph. There would be no improvement to the asset or decline of the asset. Carriageway backlog is 50 million. With regards to available budget, this is made up of revenue and capital. Revenue is reactive works undertaken in-house, e.g. potholes, etc. Capital is your main works, preservation treatments, or resurfacing works, reconstruction works. As you can see from looking at the table, taking 25-26, the available capital budget is 650k per year, which is well short of the steady state figure of 2.4 million, which is evident in the graph. As time moves on, the red numbers poor condition are increasing. Improving the asset, the budget is required that exceeds a steady state figure of 2.4 million, but the figure should be closer to your backlog figure of 50 million. Next graph, please. Type of carriageway defects. All adopted roads are inspected by a qualified highways inspector in accordance with the Council Highway Maintenance. The defect on the left, critical defects and safety defects, in accordance with the Council's Highway Maintenance Manual, exceed the Council's safety intervention level and need to be repaired. The defects on the right, maintenance defect and programme repairs, do not exceed the Council intervention level. However, on the maintenance defect, the Highways Inspector will undertake an assessment to determine if the defect will become a critical defect or safety defect before the next inspection. Please note there are many defects on the network that do not exceed the Council's safety intervention level. Next slide, please. Type of potholes. Do receive inquiries that we have not repaired a pothole properly. Type of repair we undertake very much depends on the location and a set time scale. Just a few examples. Quote on the left, the defect is in one lane, therefore the works can be undertaken safely using traffic signals. The defect is squared off and repaired using traditional tarmac. The photo on the right, defects need to be repaired within 2 hours due to the depth of the defect on a category of road. To undertake additional repair, as shown in the first example, the signals will need to be switched off, temporary lights installed so you can control the traffic or close the road. Note this is a very busy junction, therefore the defects repaired were reported for by a fix. I know this repair has been in place for 10 years. It does look unsightly, but it is fit for purpose. Cost for additional tarmac is £85 per tonne. Via fix is £320 per tonne. Therefore, we always aim to undertake traditional repair. However, there will be certain circumstances where this is not possible. Next slide, please. Footway asset, 923 kilometres. Material ranges from high quality paving, city centre, to general footways, tarmac. Paving is used to enhance areas but can be high maintenance, which is very expensive to maintain. Tarmac footways are low maintenance and low cost to maintain. Next slide, please. Footway condition. To remain a steady state, a budget of 643k is required per year. The budget of 640k spent on the footway per year, the colours on the graph in year zero were projected across. There will be no improvement to the asset or decline. The backlog figure is 14.3 million. With regards to available capital budget, we're looking at 50k per year, which is short of a steady state figure of 643, which is reflected in the graph. As you can see from the graph, the amount of budget available, you can see the ambers increase and red starting to creep in. Again, to improve the asset, the budget required exceeds a steady state figure, 643k, but the figure should be closer to your backlog figure, 14.3 million. Next slide, please. Structures asset. This includes road bridges, footbridges, subways, culverts, retaining walls, a total of 665 structures. Maintain a steady state, over just 1 million is required per year. The budget 1 million is spent on the asset per year. In year 24-25, colours will project across the graphs. There'll be no improvement or decline. Backlog figure is 41.7 million. Regards to capital investment, we are looking at 200k per year, which is short of this steady state figure of 1 million. As you can see from the graph, the amount of budget available, you can see the ambers and reds are increasing with time. Again, to improve the asset, a budget is required that exceeds your steady state figure of 1 million, but the figure should be closer to your backlog figure of 41.7 million. Next slide, please. In Newport, we do have a number of unique structures which need to be maintained for the benefit of all. George Street Bridge, 1960s, cable stay, grade 2 listed. Town Bridge, 1920s, steel trusses on stone piers. City Footbridge, 2000, cable stay. We also have the new active child bridge over the railway, linking Devon Place to the city centre. Next slide, please. Street lighting asset. This includes 18,860 street lighting columns and just over 19,000 lanterns. Street lighting columns are due to risk of deterioration. The columns are tested on a rolling programme. 1,822 or 9% of the street lighting columns have exceeded the expected design life. Therefore, additional testing are undertaken to ensure they not become a risk to the public. Next slide, please. Main estate state, a budget of 1.2 million is required per year. The backlog figure is 5.9 million. With regards to available capital budget, we're looking at 33k per year, which is below the steady state figure. Therefore, there will be no improvement to the asset, only decline. This investment is reflected in the graph. The weather conditions are just starting to creep in as time moves on. Next slide, please. Traffic signals. This includes traffic signals, junction, pedestrian crossings. Maintain a steady state, a budget of 520k is required per year. The budget of 520k was spent on the asset per year, and the colours will project across the graph. Backlog figure is 5.4 million. With regards to available capital budget, we're looking at 34k per year, which is short of a steady state figure of 520k, which is reflected in the graph. The reds are getting bigger. Again, to improve the asset, the budget is required that exceeds a steady state figure of 520k, but the figure should be closer again to your backlog figure at 5.4 million. Next slide, please. The drainage asset. There are 35,000 gullies. We also have a number of reeds, gratings, etc. Gullies are maintained on a schedule, plus reactive maintenance following inquiries. Through a revenue budget for our schedule works, we also rely on funding from Welsh Government for capital works. It's been noted a high percentage of our gullies discharged into Welsh Water combined sewer or repair and ownership water courses. Next slide, please. Miscellaneous. Includes traffic signals, road marking, safety fencing, pedestrian barriers and bollards, etc. Backlog figure is 1.4 million. This asset is generally maintained using our revenue budget. Next slide, please. Information. The backlog figure is investment required to bring the entire asset to a suitable level, not new. Current backlog is estimated just under 119 million. Steady state required investment to maintain the highway asset to its current position, which is just under 6.5 million. That's it. Thank you. I'm sorry. Next slide, please. Sorry. Planned capital investment of the life of the camp is well short of a steady state figure. Therefore, the highways asset, carriageways and footways structures, street lighting, street furniture, traffic management signals will decline for the life of the asset. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Yes, so just to conclude, we keep the highway asset function safe, function operational, but it's based on a level of reactive repair, which would be expected and anticipated. Our capital investment, and this is a similar situation to other authorities in Newport, we're not unique, isn't enough to maintain the asset in the way that it would want to be maintained. So as such, it is continuing to deteriorate year on year. We do try and seek other capital investments, and there's made recent announcements related to anticipated Welsh Government funding, which will come in and assist. So hopefully we'll secure that and we'll be able to invest that in assets as well. So what does it mean? This means we're fixing in failures. We maintain the asset as best we can, but sometimes taken to a fail. We need to sort of either prevent use of that particular part of the asset or move it, depending on what it happens to be. But as we said, we do try and maintain it so it continues its functioning, safe and operational state. And I suppose then, as in your role as local members, as Paul mentioned earlier, it's a universal service. We all use it. It's in Newport, when you do business in Newport, resident Newport, or school in Newport. So everybody will have an opinion on the solution. Concludes the presentation, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Grateful for the presentation and the time put into it. It's really useful to sort of get an overview. We'll open the floor to questions from the committee and hopefully get some decent debate. Yep. Go on, Councillor Cave.
Okay, so over the past decade in particular, and again, it's probably been compounded by the pandemic, seeing more and more delivery vans on the road, the emergence of Amazon dictating really kind of what people buy, and also supermarket deliveries. Are any revenues gained from increased use of the roads by certain businesses, or if people pay their road tax, that's it, they can use the road as much as they want regardless of what business they represent? And is there any way, and again it would be a national issue, not that you can consolidate locally, but is there something you could take forward, because you know we're getting certain vans and certain businesses continually using our road speed up and down, doing a lot more damage than most residents, especially given many people now work from home, throughout the week. Because it seems to be one of the ongoing issues is that we haven't got enough money to fix the roads, but there's a predominance of damage done by certain types of vehicles.
Pretty much all taxation that we can generate from vehicle uses is captured by central government. So local authorities are dependent on that being reallocated through capital houses. Back to 10 years or more, virtually no capital coming into authorities. Hence, you're sort of trying to patch and repair, which is the problem. So with the small amounts of income, parking bays, resident parking bays, that sort of stuff, but those are tiny in the scheme of the challenge. So at the moment, obviously some councils have congestion charge type approach. There's no plans or something to that in Newport currently. Also, a lot of delivery vans are they tend to be more environmentally friendly because they do not provide it, so they convert over.
Can we just define that? Sorry, because I haven't heard that phrase before. Pedestrian what?
Yes.
Congestion. What's happening there with pedestrians? Congestion. Right.
You can charge pedestrians.
We'll see. He's the less active.
So on Paul, we get the vehicles go around at the moment and that they take footage of people who are legally parking. They get slightly different subject, but where does that the money go from the fines there? Where does that go?
So that has come back in the highways, but in surplus and that can be reinvested in highways. Broadly, that covers the cost of the people going out and doing it, because obviously you've got to employ people who have the vehicles, the processing of the tickets, and don't knock me down like this, but because those penalty charges were set in, I don't know, 2005 or whatever, if they sort of haven't been increased each year, obviously people's wages go up each year.
So there is a link though between the amount of fines that are issued and the money generated.
Yeah.
So in theory, if those cars are out, and I don't want to see anybody, I don't see anybody kind of necessarily find it. We know there are hotspots in Newport where people continue to park on double yellow lines and on curbs and spaces where they shouldn't. And so if these cars are at a more regular basis, there could be a reward to people's ignorance of the rules of the highway. So we could generate more income through.
But the sort of money you're looking at is relatively small against the backlog of it. But yes, there's a small surplus that we generate from that sort of activity. But again, it is challenging because the penalties were set, a long time ago. They haven't really kept up with inflation. So
can they be reviewed?
That's a central government policy. So they set those fees. We go out.
£25.
I think it depends on the fence, doesn't it? It depends on your fence, and so there's two rates, and it's £50 or £70, which is where your £35 comes from, because if you pay it early, it's reduced to £30 rate and a £25
Can I let Councillor
Yeah,
Thompson
it's
come in on
not
the same
ironic,
point as
isn't
well?
it, that private
Yeah.
companies can charge £100 a whack on these
That's
things.
obviously on private
Yeah,
land.
yeah.
We're regulated.
Yeah. But just on this point, on the funding of junctions and the demand for extra funding, can the fines from the further civil enforcement powers, which we're about to get, be used for this? Can they make a contribution?
If you're referring to moving traffic offenders, yeah, I wouldn't say we're about to get. I think we discussed it at previous
Yes,
meeting,
we
and we're going through a business case
Yeah,
process.
I mean, it may be a small amount, but it will be something, won't it?
It might be a bit of business cases about proving similar to what Paul said about civil enforcement. Does it wash its face? Does it generate the income? Is it modelled to generate the
Yeah.
income that it would need to run the scheme? But that is something we would look up, and yes, it would be finance would be retained by ourselves.
There will be. We're going to be using technology for this, aren't we? Well, aren't going to have a little man with a red flag flagging people down. No, this is going to be technology based, and there is quite a lot of that available now.
Yeah, it'd be we are a system which would be utilised, and that's what we're factoring in business case.
The challenge you've got to pay for that start off, so you'd have to,
Yes,
to cover those.
Although, I mean, there are, I believe there are private sector agreements with organisations where they go and provide a service at no cost for the installation of the. I'm trying to think of the next. I've heard about one of these examples recently. I don't know what it is now, but where they go and provide the infrastructure, as it were, for free, because but they keep a proportion of the fines. Who is this? Oh yeah, I know some of the private parking companies.
Yeah, there's private time companies
Yeah.
and
They-
supermarket car
yeah,
parks and stuff
that's
like
it,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, probably got so the approach that the council needs to take in how it deals with any of those is that the issue of fines, etc. plays part, I suppose, to be there to create correct habits and enforcement. We're not supposed to use it as a way to generate income, accepting that, sometimes you can generate service income, and then that has to be retained.
Yeah. Is it only felt because it's national, there are national figures on the most, I can put it this way, heavily fined road users, or put it another way, profitable roads from fines. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those funds will come from speeding caps, which of course is the central government. Yes. And council is disagree to speed cap.
So Pim, did you want to finish your point?
Yeah, slightly different subject, but you mentioned the different assets that you're responsible for at the moment and expected to maintain. An ongoing issue in my ward, and Chair, I know that we shouldn't bring up local issues, but I think that this affects other wards within Newport, and it's the grass verges. It's a very contentious issue, and Stephen and Rheoli will be aware of some of the pictures that I sent through recently of the churned up grass verges where vehicles park, because these grass verges, they separate that area between the pavement and the road. Again, lots of delivery vans from supermarkets, Amazon, they park there on a regular basis. They're continually churning up the mud to the point that it looks absolutely dreadful at the moment. They're filled with water. The water then gets tracked onto the road, making the road a slippery surface. They're unsightly. It wasn't mentioned in there, the grass verges, so would that come under the footway or carriageway, or is it different? Is there no budget for it at the moment?
Fall into both ways.
So it will fall into footways.
Yes,
So again, I know that you said that you did come back to me recently and say it's an ongoing discussion. The utilities, one of the reasons why they can't be tarmacked over, completed over, is because of the utilities that are underneath. So we're seeing more and more utility companies digging up the road. So again, like Peppa Pig and Mr. Paul comes out, we're digging up the road. It's happening for installation and also repairs. A lot of, mainly running water issues with cracks in the old piping. Do we gain anything from the utility companies who are digging up the road? Do they pay us a charge for the work they do? Or is it a case of if the road, if their cables or their pipes are broken, they have to get access to them? Because as we all know, the contractors are not the ideas or neatest when they do their repairs. They leave bumps on pavements, they leave lumps on roads, and more often than not, these companies are back out a year later, especially in the range parts of my ward, fixing areas that were previously fixed and then again broke. So is there any financial not reward, but do we get anything back off these utility companies for the work that they do?
So they have a right to operate in the highway, because they've got kit in the highway. And they have a right to be able to maintain and install new kit in that highway. We do, manage is too strong a word, but we do interact with them because we've got a streetworks team which sits under Andrew, where all the statutory undertakers, whatever work they can, should be telling us. Not that work, so we can inspect it as we choose to see fit.
Do we inspect and sign off their work, or they
Not
do it
every piece
themselves?
of work, not every piece of work, because you can imagine how much work is going on across. Say any local authority, but particularly in a busy area, people within their certain environment. We are able to fine, but only in certain circumstances if they haven't done what they should have done.
Yeah.
But again, because of the costs you get, it's pretty small. Small fine. But we do look to do that. Maybe not to make.
But whilst they've
make
got
sure
it
they-
right,
to do them.
yeah, their business model benefits from their access to our assets.
Yeah, it's because they're a statutory undertaker. They basically get permission from the Secretary of State. So once you have an adopted asset, so this is the assets, then they have a right to access it. They should do it with notification to us. See, so within our fees and charges schedules, that will be up with the budget. One of the massive appendices at the back of them, you'll see that there's some charges for the section. This, that, and the other 50 section, but the other licenses or obscure licenses. So we don't want to charge them a bit, and those are increased. Some of those fines though are regulated, so they're limited on what they can be. So across the year, I can't remember what we got this year, but it'll be in the range of a few 100,000 that we generate. But obviously, you're paying those people who are inspected to do it, and it broadly covers that cost. There's a bit of a surplus. I see what you're getting, and it's a frustration for us because not only that is actually a lot of the
Many of the potholes are actually
I
on
was going to say a lot of the
repaired
instances
roads.
where people think, why are they digging at the road?
Yeah.
It's not the council, but someone sees a ban.
No, but we get blamed for it, and we seem to be paying the.
Yeah, so we are often chasing that around as well.
Or like when you resurface the roads and then they put their repair, but it creates a little noise then
Yeah.
someone runs over it.
Yeah. And then when there's a frost, that's the bit that deteriorates the fastest.
But coming back to the grass bridges, is it possible that the utility companies could make a contribution to a sustainable surface covering to those areas? Because at the moment, we know cars are going to park on them most of the time. They're in residential areas, opposite schools, or places where people will park temporarily and drive off. Again, we got our supermarket delivery vans turning up, tuning it up. And one of the reasons why we can't put anything in there is because of access to the cables and pipes underneath. Well, surely, if they're there because of the utility companies that charge us all every month to use the broadband or use the water, can we request that they make a contribution towards it? Because they're limiting what we can do with the area at the moment.
So the issue being is their powers and their abilities are at a high level as they come from central government, so they can. I don't say they do what they like, but we can't enforce. We can only enforce within the rules we have. Also, in terms of the verges, yes, they stick them in there because they're available and easier to access. But along most of those areas, we need an element of verge because there's not capacity in highway drainage, so we need a proportion of soak away. So even if there wasn't utilities in there, we wouldn't be able to cover them over, if you like, because we need both vegetation. We also need impermeable services as well.
Yeah, I think I mentioned before that the compressed chicken.
Yeah,
I know that it's I'll get it now, but it's more that a lot of the repairs I've noticed over the past 5 years seem to be as a result of utility companies digging at the road continually and then not doing the best finish afterwards. And then we're left with the criticism that comes with it and the potholes that result in.
Yeah, the thing is that comes with that different type of service comes with a maintenance cost. And if they aren't obliged to contribute or manage it, they might, but it'll be out of the goodness of their heart effectively. And,
Yeah,
what are the chances?
So maybe we can take a look at the then.
Yeah.
My question, my first question was going to be very similar to that about this. How do we hold the service companies accountable if they do repairs? And I'm guessing the answer to that is in a very limited way.
Yeah, we do try and monitor them as best we can, given the resources we've got and their ability to win it. But it is difficult.
Has it been examined if we have, say, extra people available, could we recoup the cost of extra people through going and identifying and going after these service companies? Is it just a question of us not having the human resources to do that?
There's potential to do some things. For example, again, think about coring. So where you would core a reinstatement done by a statutory taker, and if it fails, as if the right materials are in there, then you can recharge or find a contractor. But again, that requires a level of investment up front to get specialist contractor to do. So it is about balancing. You're right, theoretically.
It is a pity though, because when people see that they can just get away with doing a substandard job, it becomes accepted behaviour, doesn't it?
I don't think we're in that position. The Streetworks team is pretty strong.
Right.
They're pretty dynamic in terms of they will take issues with statutory undertakers if they need to. So I don't feel that the statutory undertakers are important. If they've got carte blanche to do whatever they want, but there will be occasion.
Question about this. In a meeting elsewhere, there was a comment by someone who was an engineer about surface dressing, and he used the term surface dressing on page 22, I think, of this report. And they said what previously happened was a fine coating of chippings would be put on roads with tar, I suppose, underneath to hold it down. I think we all remember the good old days where you used to slow down dramatically when you saw the little triangle warning man on the road. Otherwise, you'd get stone chipping damage on your car. And I have to say, I haven't been through an area like that for many years, which suddenly, with what was said, made me realise, oh, they don't seem to be doing that anymore. But apparently, that used to add substantially to the years of where. So, is there no cost-effective argument?
We do service dressing, and we've done some last year. I don't think examples of places because I've driven through.
We still do a lot of service dressing.
Right.
Like you said, it's a preservation treatment.
Would that be on A's, B's, and C's?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Been slightly different this year. What they tend to do now is loose chippings. Now they spray to lock the chippings in. Right. So that's why you're not seeing the loose chippings anymore.
Oh, right. Okay.
But we still do a lot of service dressing.
So it's essentially the same concept with a similar material.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
They spray it black now.
Right.
It just looks down.
And if we're going on to lighting, I'll come back again on lighting if I may.
You can go now.
Yeah, but before lighting, it was something we didn't discuss previously, if there's anything on there, but it's the drains on our assets. So again, we've gone through a period of flooding in November. Many areas in Newport experienced the damage from flooding, and Langston in particular. I'm just wondering, in terms of preparation for it, we do occasionally see the vehicles coming in and blocking the drains. Given that the likelihood is we're going to get continued rainfall, heavy rainfall, is there any way of pre-planning or improving the pre-planning so these drains are being cleaned out on a regular basis, and also vehicles being stopped to park in around certain drains so access is available? So again, I know that you're limited parking spaces outside residential areas, but I think one of the reasons in the past that certain drains have not been checked or cleared because vehicles parked on top of them, and then it's like miss that street of that road, and then it doesn't come right for another month or two.
So there's basically a schedule of the gullies that go around. As you mentioned, parked cars is more of a problem, and even the last 2 decades in particular, both for street cleansing and for gully sucking machines. So real challenge to get to the curb line a lot of the time. But there is most of the flooding events, so they will do pre-prep in hot spots. But usually the overflow isn't due to the highway drainage. It's usually due to other instances, or if it is the highway drainage, it'll be spot instances. So, for example, in November, all leaves go off the trees, don't they? Yeah. I don't matter how much resource we get, and even the government, even if the council wants to spend its entire budget just on chase it, never stop. You have to accept the views are going to come down. You have to respond to them. So you get that little bit, and you get local blockages. And the other big thing is obviously Newport is most of Australia's on a tidal lock system. So again, you know, if the river rusted up,
It's
and they're
not
not,
stopping a drain.
people think, well, the drains are overflowing. It's not. I think I've seen this where it comes back up because there's so much going down there. So, and then obviously we've got the river's fluvial, isn't it? Which is the other big issue. So often people think, I mean, very rarely they are, but even allowed that, there is some.
Yeah. So I didn't notice in the highway report, if I'm honest with you, but I didn't read it. May have missed it, so if I have, apologies. But there was no mention of potential improvements in flood soakways or runoffs, Langstonically, and again, depending on where the housing estates have been built, a lot of the water is running off the roads and going into the properties. And there didn't seem to be anything in place to divert that water when it was running off. And you know it's going to happen again. I think we had 3 storms in December, even though we've had quite a dry period. We're going to get the rain, it's going to come. So in terms of highway strategy, what are you doing to improve not the removal of water, but certainly the management of it in certain areas before the continuing flow?
Yeah, we do that. It's probably not within this particular document, it's more within our flood risk management strategy.
Okay.
So,
we did look at.
yeah, so floodwater management is covered in that document really, and that again is a sort of working, you know, it's natural resources rules, it's much water, it's other people who've got into it.
Because I think at certain times it probably was mentioned then, but even like certain drop curves in certain areas will mean the water will flow off into a ravine as opposed to continuing down the road until it finds the lowest point of resistance and then it enters into someone's front garden. But sorry, Kate, you're going to come in.
Can I let Councillor go?
Yes, yes.
Councillor Horton?
Thanks, Chair. I wasn't sure if you could see me then. It's about the roads. My question. It's kind of a two-parter, really. An old councillor, a previous councillor friend of mine, has mentioned a number of times about how the dig is dealt with, so the excavation is dealt with, and then the refill. Is the standard that if we do it ourselves, is the standard of repair the same for us as it is for if a Welsh Water does it or the electricity board does it? Is my first question.
Yes, it is the same specification. You go replace like for like.
So why don't we always go around it? I don't know what the substance is, but for argument's sake, we'll call it the tar. They always go around with the tar and then fill around the edge to prevent any water ingress.
They seal the edges. It's a couple of different methods. We paint the vertical faces. It acts as a glue, keep the two surfaces together. What we find with the bitumen on the outside does deteriorate quite quickly.
Okay, then that leads on to my next question. Then, do we analyse the data of the repair and how long it lasts? And if we do, whose repairs last longer, a service provider or our own? And if we don't do that, can we start doing it?
We'll have some ideas, but we wouldn't have detailed data. So that is something we could certainly consider with colleagues and street works. So
yeah, because it's quite important, isn't it? Because if you've got somebody that always their repair always lasts the longest, then that's best practice that could be adopted.
It's difficult though, isn't it? Because it could be an A, B, or C road as well. So you'd have to factor in the amount of usage on the road and everything else.
Chair, that's
comparing apples and pears, couldn't you?
That's not beyond the wit of man, Chair. That's something that can quite easily be factored in. They know that they know the road usage. The road usage, they put machines out everywhere to count how many vehicles are using it. If like my question stands that if somebody else does a better job than we do, or if somebody else does their repair in such a way that it lasts longer, then we should be enforcing that best practice on everybody that digs a hole in our roads, which ultimately saves us money and makes the roads last longer.
So in terms of the utility repairs, we're there are set standards on them, so we're only allowed to enforce up to those standards. And like, you know, I'm not going to pretend that
2 years.
yes, but in terms of whether you do the sides of it or the tops of it, I think that's optional. And there's other ways to do it, as long as you do them in the parameters. I think we're only allowed to enforce up to you comply with standards. So, you know, within that they've got some wiggle room, but in theory, any way of complying with those standards should be sufficient.
But I think the question was more about monitoring than enforcement, wasn't it? And if a utility company's done a pothole in a certain way and we've done a pothole in a different way, which one looks better in 2 or 3 years' time? I think that's what you're getting at.
Yes.
Well, and perhaps the contractors as well. I mean, they don't, the same people do not mend the roads or who come and peer down the drain manholes, do they? You know, the water engineers are not responsible also for repairing the roads where they have to dig them up to look down the holes.
I'm hoping they're doing more than just looking down the holes. They're almost that time,
But no, you know the point. I mean, they're getting in contractors, aren't they?
yeah.
Yeah. And so presumably some of these contractors are more efficient than others. But I mean, from the point of view of the service companies, that what they may be looking for in terms of efficiency may just be something that's less costly.
Yeah, we can see there's a way of doing that monitoring, and not, you know, in a reasonable way as possible. Yeah.
Let's check Councillor Horton on any other points. Is there any other points, Councillor Horton?
No, that's all for the time being, Chair. Thank you.
No problems, thank you. Councillor Pym, Matthew Pym. They're on the right hand side, yeah.
Street lighting. So I think street lighting, as we know, or I know, in the past decade has been insufficient because of issues related to austerity and cuts in budget. I do believe that there is a direct link between more visibility and an increase in petty crime and social behaviour, such as fine tipping, canine drug dealing. We've made a commitment to improve the visibility of the city. There's still areas of the city that are poorly lit and are quite awkward and dangerous at times to walk up and down, especially our pavements. The current lighting system that we've got at the moment with the lamppost with the LED light seems to focus on lighting the road and not the path and the pavement. If we want people to be out and about walking and using public transport, then we need to ensure that there are safe routes, visible routes to and from bus shelters and to and from businesses. Is there going to be, apart from just turning the lights on, is there going to be a review of where the lampposts are currently sited and how we can focus on improving the visibility of the pavements and pathways as opposed to the roads? Because every car that uses a road has got headlights. I mean, past an MOT, you need the headlights working, but more often than not, when people are choosing to jump in their car and drive 200 yards to the local shop instead of trying to walk down the road because of we've got recycling bins, we've got dog mess, we've got uneven surfaces on a lot of the roads and pavements, as well as turning the lights on. There's going to be an improvement in the visibility of paths and pavements as part of the process.
I suppose in terms of the hamp, will be no plans to do anything different. The key part of the hamp is before we can do anything, we've got to address the liability we've currently got. So we're not at that stage yet. In terms of doing anything different, that would require additional investment outside of the hamp. So the hamp can only talk about the assets we've got, how we can take them the best we can. I suppose again, in terms of footpath, I think it's, you know, some of the active travel funding that we're getting in, and we've had in to some of our designated footpaths now have low level lighting. So and that is sort of stuff more aimed at that. In terms of when light poles are replaced, in most instances now they're replaced at the back of footway, aren't they, when possible? So you know that does, what people are talking about does have that, but you know obviously to replace all the existing.
No, but is there a strategy or a vision of improving visibility along pavements and footpaths? Because the problem we've got at the moment is, you know, there's too many cars on the road. And so we want people like cars, we want people cycling, walking where when they can. most people, again, it may just be a cultural thing of just being lazy and getting in the car and driving into just the shop, or it may just be that you've got a really dark street and path in front of you and you find it quite intimidating to walk to the shop. So it's easier to go and park on a double yellow line or pull up on a junction and chance your luck in the evening as opposed to walking. You know, it's improving access routes, as you know, and encouraging active travel. But if we're not going to put the infrastructure in place to allow that, then we're not going to expect to see any change anytime soon.
Can we indicate to government to that level that the statutory advice on these things needs to change to include protection of citizens through the more adequate? It's difficult to say what adequate, isn't it? But, you know, encouraging people to like footpaths better. Because at the moment, as I understand it, the guidance is only that roads have to be lit.
No, there's no guidance that roads need to be lit.
Sorry?
Roads don't need to be
I thought,
lit.
well, junctions, I use the word. I thought it was junctions, which councillor Tim makes exactly the point I've made on several occasions, that shouldn't be on the road if you haven't got headlights on and can't see where the other cars are.
I don't think there is any statutory guidance.
I thought there was something about. So we don't have to light any roads at all.
That doesn't mean we're not. Obviously.
I definitely see street lights.
I think again, it's a bigger issue than here, but this is what residents complain about.
Yeah.
Poor visibility in street lighting in the Eaveswell area of my ward. You've got loads of lanes. Like I said, there's fly tipping and drinking going on in front of you. You know, you just make work against see someone doing it. But somebody get the phone and try and record it, they can't. And then you have to deal with it the next day with the aftermath that comes. Is maybe it is a change in law, and again, that there needs to be improved visibility because we've got this target of carbon, you know, this carbon neutral target, and get people out of cars and get people, you know, travelling.
Maybe we should just light the footpaths and not the roads at all.
Safer, and you're not going to do that if the streets and the lighting on the pavements continue to be poor because there's no statutory duty for us to do anything.
Well, I think as Paul said, you know, with the sort of emerging active travel network, I think they're generally, correct me if I'm wrong, we try and put the lighting in to go with the path. It's not always possible because sometimes you're retrofitting where the path actually is. Yeah. But you know, so in the sense, is there a strategy? I suppose that one there is a sort of strategy to have it lit for safety as a number of criteria that is thought about. Putting the active travel routes in. So I suppose some active contributor to that as it expands.
It is, isn't it? I think the issue of that, and also on new state design guidance will say that as well. I think the issue is you to address everything we've currently got. The cost of that will be far beyond anything we've got available at the moment. And you know, and the HAMP it really talks about maintaining existing assets that exist in standards. We'd love to be able to go beyond that, right? I think that's almost, you know, the active travel strategy probably is important. That Welsh Government's active travel guidance policy does, you know, inform that area, and if there is going to be more on that, that's the route to recover.
Could that be changed at Welsh Government level, or would that be a national government change?
Welsh Government set the active travel guidance. So it's complicated now. It comes from core legislation in the UK, but they set their own active travel guidance. So our standards on active travel come from Welsh Government. They are over and above the UK.
They have been quite focused on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say this is, you know, about maintaining the assets that we've got as opposed to a changing strategy and doing something different. So just to kind of like focus on, I take the point entirely, but yeah,
it's going to be honest really quick and
yeah,
it's dramatically changing.
I mean, I guess the point is these guys have got about £1.5 million a year for street lighting, and you know, only 34k of that a year is on column replacement. So you aren't going to be replacing any soon. I mean, it'd be useful to understand what the average cost of one is. So how many you're getting for 34k is probably the bit that's missing from the data for me. Probably not many. So in reality, you're like, yeah, you're not making a dent anywhere near what you want to in terms of actually being able to go with new sort of kit that sort of improves or better understands the visibility. That's the challenge. But, yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go on, Kate.
On street lighting, the police have told me that there is no evidence that street lighting prevents crime, or lack of street lighting prevents crime. So I was going to say, you're nodding over there, but does the council have an opinion on this? We find our residents have lots of opinions on it.
We want them studied separately here, although they don't report any. The police knows most of the crimes are committed during the day and when it's light.
Yeah.
But there's some studies done where some streets were lit, some streets haven't, and it seems to be slightly higher crime in areas that were lit. I don't know. I suppose it's challenging. So
Detected and reported crime also. I mean, we all see petty cane. Well, it's not even petty. It's cane everywhere across the city. How often you report it? Because you see some person in a scarf and a hoodie, and they do their deal and drive off. By the time you've got a chance to even report it, it's gone. But we all know it's happening.
Yeah, I do think we should use every platform that we have to remind people that these things need to be reported, that we will have no improvement. Anything. That includes the Argus over there, please. You missed that.
Just trying to what Paul said. When we it's second initiative for the police cycling at a fairly senior level.
Yeah.
And did some background work for people studies, and that, as you mentioned, the link wasn't proven.
It's really difficult to make this point to people when they've got something stuck in their head they don't want to change their mind. Can I ask you about the
Kate, can I just let
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Councillor here, Malik. Thanks, Kate.
Hello. Yes, thank you, Chair. On the topic of street lighting, why aren't we looking at solar powered lighting? This is obviously a strategy for the next 5 years for the future. I know other local authorities have got something. Are we considering it, or is it too expensive? Is there any reasons why it's not mentioned in this strategy?
I think what we looked at before, I'm sure what the current thing is that you can't guarantee enough generated for the space that you've got to light yourselves. And also we like to see a couple of lights out there. This obvious that they tend to be up in the trees. So trying to attract it is challenging. I don't know whether the technology changed for us, but I think that was the barrier last time I was. So you think, oh yeah, you just generate this and then you don't need it, but the maths don't seem to quite work on it, as I understand it.
Are you saying that they don't work, they're inefficient? They don't produce enough?
So yeah, so that's the gist of it. You would need a much bigger canopy.
Yeah.
Street light in order to generate enough for it. That was the last time I looked at it. I've seen some brief website. I don't know about anything.
But we have looked into it.
Maybe as technology changes, but it's the same with cars, isn't it? I think solar panels on top of cars, but that does you can't generate it faster than the car uses it.
Yeah.
I think personally we would like to be open-minded, that if there is obviously another issue is that to retrofit all the lights would come at a cost. I don't know exactly what that cost would be, but you'd have to be mindful of that as well. But we wouldn't be disregarding anything that could be rolled out within budgets. I think it would be considered, wouldn't it?
So we do that on some bus shelters, and you won't see because it's on the top of it, but because that's enough to power the LED displays you got on there, and also in some of our VMS. So those are the signs, they're like digital signs that you have winding across there. So where you can generate enough to feed the thing, that is done, but it generally isn't currently for street lights. But as technology and battery storage is improving all the time, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas.
I've been aware that there may have been an issue with lights being out, which actually wasn't our issue. It's to do with the national grid. How widespread is that problem across the city, and when are they likely to see a resolution to this problem?
Give you an exact answer of how widespread it is, but a significant proportion of the cable asset is owned by national grid.
Right.
So if there's a cable fault as well as a light fault, 2010.
Is there?
It could be National Grid.
Right.
They've got different service standards to us, so they'll come in and they'll look at some 20 to 25, possibly 30-day period.
Sorry, repeat that.
20 or 25, possibly a 30-day period.
Right.
To repair.
Right.
What they can do if they can't see an immediate fault, they may just replace the fuse in the system, which might last for a day, might last for 100 days.
Right.
But it's difficult for them.
Because they've got a problem on the cable.
Yeah, they
Right.
could have a problem on cable run of sort of 200 meters, for example.
Right.
And they couldn't necessarily dig up 200 meters of cable. So that's why sometimes the same lights will fail fairly rapidly, because it could be, you know, that they've repaired, they can't identify the fault, repair the fuse has gone again, and they have to go back there again. But
Right.
we have had a good conversation with the Newport Council, so it is something we're very likely to.
Can I come in on saying?
Mhm.
Because I sort of made some option the same thing about particular problems in my area, and the likes of SDR, which we're told is a national grid fault, so keep on reporting it. But we're told it's been referred to national grid. They take ages and ages and ages to even attend sometimes, and then sort of, as you say, do a sort of replacement on a fuse, and then it's gone again, and you have to report it again. That's a particular frustration for residents. Is there any sort of service standards we can sort of expect or impose of them? Is there legislation that says they should be doing things, you know, within a particular time, or can we agree some service level agreements with them in terms of their regulations? Because it is crap for residents. You know.
So we can't, again, because they're a statutory undertaker, it's not controlled by us. And yes, it is poor. It will be the lowest of their priorities. So, you know, houses for their businesses and etc. Then this will come at the bottom. It is the lowest of their priorities. It is, yeah, as you say, we get the same issues as well because we see the same sort of stuff that you all see here. And we raise it, and people, you know, as seen it, actually the leader of the council called them in to speak with them and express concerns about this. And the cabinet member very recently and has asked for frequent updates. We don't have any power over them, you know, but it is frustrating because, you know, more often than not, most of our bulbs, they're all LEDs. They last really long time.
Yeah.
It's actually the power supply that is really causing the problem.
So if we've got no power over them, that's a national government legislation issue, then, isn't it?
It is, and then there's the regulator, the NEST, which you know, it's supposed to control power, but again, they'll say it's not a priority over and above. Again, it's not statutory to light the streets. It's you know, it's common, but it's not statutory.
Okay, sorry, same.
I had somebody did contact me and thought that they had neighbour affairs had had a fall, which they blamed on this insufficient lighting on the street. And this is one of these sections of road which have been out for quite, perhaps intermittently, which may be explained by the fuse thing over the last few weeks. So, you know, I mean, if they try to take action and seek compensation, who would they seek it against?
I don't know, yes, as a legal expert, I don't think there is any because again, there's no statutory use.
Okay, I'll just suggest they report it in.
Okay, Councillor.
Andrew, in your presentation, you mentioned that there's surveillance that goes around tracking the conditions of the road.
Yeah.
How often does that go out? Is it done at a certain time of the year? And is it repeated through the year? Or is it a case of it goes out in January and it won't go out that section of road until the following January?
It's done by an external company and take the surveys yearly.
Yeah.
So yes, it's done once a year, and it is weather dependent. You need to have dry roads. So I think this year, but
Got delayed this year because we already for this year.
Yeah.
March, April.
So the figures that generate that, so you know, we do our performance report every 6 months, every quarter. But those are the figures in those boxes that those machines generate. So you'll see the scores in there.
Yeah.
So we're constantly reporting actually to this committee, isn't it? We report those in. So yeah, it is an annual survey, but and so yeah, it may change a lot for the next year. But in honesty, you know, when you're planning highway work, you know, think this, you've got to design the stuff, you've got to tender stuff, you know, because it is an annual cycle.
So is there a schedule of works at the moment in terms of pre-planning, or do you just, is it more of a QA policy whereby you repair the roads when they're broke? Because there are certain areas in Newport that have been in a poor condition for a long time. and they're approved, they look great. You know, we all know which places we're talking about. So is that scheduled in advance so ward councillors can communicate with people who are regularly complaining, and rightly so, as to when it can be expected to be either improved or certainly it's completely resurfaced? Because Chepstow Road caught me off guard. I mean, just drove down one morning, it was being done, and then you're looking around, you're thinking, as bad as that section was, it was bad, and briefly has been done. There's some other parts of the city that urgently need.
There is actually, you know, it goes back to those 4 figures, isn't it? There's lots that isn't doing. All over the world, there's not enough money to do them.
Yeah.
So it's about having to prioritise within that. So we, you know, the amount we got, and this is not a new thing. This has been building up over.
But have you got a plan for the year
So,
ahead? Which sections of road?
Yeah. When you know, we get funding for the year that we've got, that survey itself produces an output.
Yeah.
But then we look at other factors as well.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point you make there. Chepstow Road probably wasn't the worst. But what we did in Chepstow Road was something that his whole life would mean that it was the right time to intervene with that treatment. So there will be roads people with worse conditions, but it might be that they need further, more invasive treatment.
Yeah.
Whereas Chepstow Road was a treatment that would preserve it for another.
So
Yeah, 6, 7.
I could imagine service treatment discussions you're having, saying that that's.
And can we, some of the roads going into like the private retail parks, those are pretty poor, big potholes, again, you get into them. And again, are they ever assets? So Spinny Retail Park, for example, and just make all of them. So if there's a pothole there, how could residents kind of complain but report that? Would that be through the council, or would that be, is it?
You'd probably just go to the owners of Spinny Retail Park.
But can we as a local authority kind of force that they improve?
We don't have any powers to control with that.
The roads that run through the retail park there, the roads, not the ones that are by the parking, the roads that run through, you know, up to the roundabouts that are sort of on the road.
So the SDR and
Yeah, that section there to Spinny Retail Park, that you go down plan.
that's it.
As you turn left off that bit onto the roundabout, that's all that was the roundabout, that's it. Because we cut all the grass verges.
Yeah, that's ours.
Yeah.
You know, not the bits you want, the private thing.
Yeah, but the bit that goes around and sticks around the main roundabouts are all ours, aren't they? Yeah.
Just like we looked at our records.
No worries. I'm going to let Councillor Linton come in. She's been waiting patiently for a while. Sorry, Councillor Linton.
Thank you, Chair. Going back into the street lighting issue regarding the failures with statutory authorities and power underneath, which isn't our responsibility for the actual lighting going out. Are we aware might be made? Do we already know, or is it got to be reported to us before any action is taken? I've had the same issue as other ward members. That I've been reported this street light and the whole street is out, but I didn't know. I had to phone through, and it's finding out it's going to be weeks later that it's not our responsibility. It's by the statutory authority. Do we automatically know, or how do we? Are we aware of it?
If someone's got a complaint, we would suggest coming to us, because if then a resident isn't going to know that the underground cable fault it's not the council to report it to us. We do that work then to find out, you know, where that fault might be, and if it's National Grid, then we will go to National Grid and advise them that we feel there's that fault on their network.
So we're not aware of any street lights being out at the time they go out or anything. We can't monitor. You don't know until it gets reported. Is that right?
No, we don't have a live monitoring system of every light off. We do inspections. So lights are inspected by our contractor, but if they're on when they pass, then they won't know it. But yeah, we're not advised by technology, for example, that such and such light has gone off. It does have to be sort of seen by human eyes.
Right, reported back. Right, okay. Right, all right, thanks.
It would be very helpful, you know, if we actually have some feedback, because I do report things like this in, but I've never actually had a first-hand report from an officer back saying, well, it's not as it's the grid.
Yeah,
No.
sorry, that was going to be one of my follow-up questions as well.
Oh,
Can we
sorry.
have feedback to the member? I was waiting there. I knew you would jump in with that one. So yeah, carry on.
That's related to some of the customer services databases.
Exactly.
So I think we are trying to include that. So
If we knew we could say something that was authoritative.
the
I've
look
had
back,
that feedback
yeah,
to be fair,
I
recently as well.
yeah, okay, so that's improvement, but that may be the individual customer service operator taking the effort to do that. What we need to do is join that up with the stuff that they got front line, so that could become automatic, and that's
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, that's something we've been talking about, and yeah, but because it's being considered important at a level above infrastructure, we can with infrastructure.
Yeah, because I mean, these things go through city services, don't they, through our contact, our emails. And if they have the live list and could just drop us a line to tell us, because they'll know when we've complained about things or notified you of things.
I tend to get it on follow-up, so if I haven't had a reply and you send a chaser and say, well, I've reported this, been waiting a while, then you tend to get a response in with a justification, hence knowing that it was a national grid issue, sort of read by the SDR, because one of the officers come over was sort of fed back to say, waiting on national grid's report of this date, they haven't been out and they went out and did this and it didn't resolve it. So I have had that, and that's great, to be honest, because I just fed that directly back to the resident, and they know then that the kind of issues being dealt with and resolved. So
yeah,
that information is really important.
Yeah, that works in some respects. Obviously, if it's like, you've asked for yellow lots of roads and you don't drive down it for another 2 months, and then when do you drive it, like, oh, they did it. Oh, I wish someone had said, because that's actually great news.
Yeah.
So we are aware of
two
that.
more from me.
it's but that's tying up some of our systems. So good in that example, but obviously that's what the member staff chasing round. But 18,000 on street lights, unsurprisingly, a lot of them, are fault. So we've got to try and make that a little bit clearer for people. But just going back to that core point is, if a light, we get a lot of reports of things that nothing the council could deal with or nothing to do with us. But if a light column starts with an N on it, just report that into us, and then the team does all the chasing back down.
Yeah.
If it doesn't start with an N, report it to whoever council that light column belongs to, and that's the way they put it in Newport. So,
Any other questions?
No, just one last point, if it's okay.
Yeah, go on.
It's just that, would it be possible to, now that you know what we've got in terms of the budget the year ahead, is it possible to send out a schedule of expected or anticipated works across the city? Because again, if you've got family and friends and people we know across Newport that will badger us as councillors trying to find out when that stretch of road on one of the main roads is going to be fixed. And again, a bit like Chepstow Road, you only find out until the traffic lights are up and the signs are out. It would be nice if that communication was passed on to us, especially some of the most aggrieved parts of the city, like your mountainous roads, like the town bridge, places that people are regularly complaining about.
we kind of, I thought we did that for ward members last year in terms of the ones that
You get a weekly update, don't we? But that's more in terms of statutory.
I thought we did something for but if not, the one thing I'd say in caution is we'll sort of, we start up a list, and that list may have 20 roads on it, but we don't know when we'll get the 20 roads, because there's an approximate cost. But obviously, if they're doing, and again, a utility comes in the interim or digs up something, so we need to do more patching. You're in a, so you may not get to the bottom of that list.
So
even
on the main road, so
yeah,
I give you two Malpas Road, Newport Road, two places that they're talking.
I have a Malpas Road. We have not been up that.
Councillor Pym, Alex Pym.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the strategy, the spending for the next 5 years, how do we compare to other local authorities? Are they spending more than us or the same?
I mean, they'll all be doing their in around about now. Different authorities have different road lengths and the like. So, our spending has been low over the last decade, but it's a challenge, isn't it? It's the council's got a fixed amount of capital we can spend, and we're relying on grants really from central government. But you spend more on this, you have to spend less on schools, don't you? Or you spend less on so it's only so easy you can cut your crop. Newport has less roads than most councils, but more traffic on the roads, so more usage. Understand that, And also we have a number of interesting structures. We've got which is highways pain in the ass. So we've got a number of things that cost a lot of money as well. So I mean, it varies from council to council across the. I mean, the picture though across Wales and UK is broadly the same in that the amount of money you need just to keep it as it is not there across the UK. We just equivalent with that. There's varying amounts of how much it's not there, but it's not there. So there's a shortfall. So in essence, what you're left with your highway management plan is how do you make sure that it's safe? So, you know, what we're doing is make sure things are safe. They may not be aesthetically the best, or people may think, well, that's not very good. But every council's in that similar position.
Okay. Yeah, everyone. I haven't asked any of my questions yet, and I got a list.
Well, you want a few?
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Okay. Can you tell me how commuted maintenance sums falls into this? So if we adopt the route, we get a commuted maintenance sum which looks at sort of maintaining that asset over a period of time. How does that factor in? Is that budget set aside or just swallowed up in the overall budget?
It's more prevalent in new SAP legislation. So there's community sum for drainage infrastructure will be built as part of the development, and that will be separately kept separate. Budget will be utilized. In terms of
So there tends not to be much, tell me I'm wrong, for the actual highway asset itself. Just for verges and other infrastructure, the highway asset itself tends to be like we install a junction. That tends to be a one and gone.
Yeah.
There's very little in terms of ongoing future maintenance. They tend to be more things with you know, a road, brand new road going in should last 20 years or so. So they tend to be for less than that. I think SAB is the exception in 60 years.
Yeah. And in terms of sort of this highway asset management plan will refer to adopted highways. So there are a number of unadopted highways across the city, which causes lots of problems. We've got quite a few in our ward. There was an indication from Welsh Government at some point in the past, which we previously discussed as part of this scrutiny, that they may sort of find the funding for us to adopt those. I think part of the reason for not adopting them is because they're in such a poor state that they don't meet the adoption criteria. Do we consider that at all, or do we just exclude it from our mind? Because if there's a safety issue on them, I know we often end up going in and doing sort of minor repairs, even though they're not adopted, because we think it's sort of pedestrian safety or whatever. But where does that sort of
So in terms of this strategy, this only is our adopt assets, and it does include the SDL, the office private asset we've got here, but it doesn't include the adopt. So as you're right, Welsh Government has had some very small scale funding for that, which we've been into, but I think even a single road is greater than the limit of those. That's really struggled in the past. We did an estimate, I think there's about £12 million worth of unadopted roads, and they're in some funny places. You know, you'll find a road in the middle and you think, is that's not a road. It is a challenge, and also we're actually having more of that coming on, which creates more of an issue in the future as well to some extent. Yeah, in terms of highway safety,
we do have powers to go in, but we would resist it because we want to take on some routes by the fact we've done some work there, but we do have powers to go in. It's a should rather than must.
Okay. In terms of the, so you just bringing notes, yeah. So for the council to formally adopt a highway asset, yeah, it has to be brought up to a certain standard. That's in a big book that clever people will read. And so that process needs to be complete before the council can legally adopt a road under Section 38 Highways Act. So that's the process you're talking about.
Yeah, and so aside from that, there is, don't quote me on the exact figures, I'll say around sort of between 4 and 4.5 million worth of Section 106 funding for highways, sat in the Section 106 bank account. How are we monitoring that to make sure that work gets done, or if we've had the funds and we're doing it? I know some of that is sort of time limited funding and just pays for reducing sort of asset over a period of time, but some of that work, that's sort of the money that has never been done, who looks after that, and how do we kind of ensure that money is spent where it should?
it's within infrastructure.
Yeah.
So we will secure that funding as well. Appreciate it. It's been problematic in the past because of resources within the team to progress some of the works. Some things we've been identified. We haven't been able to progress some of them. Typically, the ones that we do well are things like we've got a contribution for bus service. We'll pick that up. If there's sort of studies and things like that to be able to take it, that's sometimes where it takes longer. But we are looking at that spreadsheet that we referred to there. So on top of that, to ensure that anything we can get, we do get.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's like £4.5 million sat there, and we've got money to invest in the highway. I know that the sort of the money on the 106 will be for a specific area, but it's certainly where you would want to put resource surely to sort of improve the local highway network for that area, making sure that that's followed through. And some of that money's been sat in that pot for a very long time. So this is not just kind of stuff that sort of, you know, it's been sat for a very long time.
So some of it, when we've looked at some of this recently, some of it will be, as you mentioned, that dementia stuff, and that's usually for transport. So, for example, the newer statements, they'll say they have to done plus 20 years, and etc. Others, it will be, you know, there needs to be a crossing, whatever, done. So you're limited to putting in that crossing at that time. If the rate of development of those houses is slower, there's nothing to put a crossing on, etc. So you know, a lot of those issues will come with some of the plan obligations. Not saying that there's still
some of the stuff, lots of that stuff's done by the developer in 2008 and 2011.
It's a bit of a mixture.
It
is a bit of a mixture. So you're right. A lot of it is done by that, but a lot of it is these pots. Again, it's usually very restricted, so it's within that area, or it will be. The other example is, you know, effectively acknowledging that they're going to damage the roads. Is, you know, so bringing those roads up. But you wait till after the development's complete, otherwise you sort of you do that before, and then no one's going to be damaged. So
yeah,
you're right. There definitely is some, but a lot of it when you dig into the detail.
And the traffic signals backlog, for example, on here is sort of, so to maintain them is 1.2 million. The backlog, sorry, wrong page, but to maintain steady state, £500,000 a year, and then backlog of 5.4 million. Don't see, for example, like lots of traffic lights not working. So you get a failure of a traffic light system area, and we go out and repair it. So there's a sort of reactive maintenance requirement on it. There isn't much being. Is this because we sort of look at it and say, well, it should have a 20-year life cycle, it's been there 30 years, so therefore it needs replacing? Is that where the backlog comes from? So we're giving it a life cycle and a component cycle, but then not replacing it.
It's partly that. You say you don't see many going out, like,
no, see lots going out, but not ones that are working, not, you know, off all the time.
I don't know if you, so the clip earlier with the lighted column, so some of them will be, you know, damaged to a state that we wouldn't really prefer to have that up, it's rusted through or whatever.
Right.
And so that is past where it should be replaced, but it is technically safe. So they'll have to they increase the safety inspections on those, and so they drag out the life, if you like. But I get what you're saying. It's not a matter of we always replacing every 20 years. And that's an informant, you know, that informs for something about it lasts a lot longer. But also, I suppose the challenge on when they do go beyond that, their desired life is that we do get more of those failings, and also some of those traffic signals, then they can't be dynamic, so they can't be. So whenever you have a problem, you have a big problem for a long time. So it's a mixture of all those things. It's not a it's not a hard and soft, or that lights out now it's falling on the floor. It's all just discrete.
Okay, I'm just trying to have the length of that asset.
Yeah.
So it's from space on the assumptions, such like you might get 5 years left.
Yeah, so, and do you replace with failure, or do you replace it? So it's that sort of reactive and capital sort of debate, isn't it? Two final sort of questions really around those unadopted roads. So there are lots of roads in the city that are unadopted, but there are Section 38 agreements in place for them to be adopted, and there are performance bonds in place for the contractor to do that. So at what point do we go and say, well, give us the bond because you haven't done the road there? It doesn't seem like we put any resource into kind of that. And in one bank, you know, on Kate's area is an issue. Lysa Village is an issue, and there are a number of other new ones where developers have just sort of shot off and left residents sort of, you know, in a state where
New estate, just the bad steps.
Yeah.
Performance bonds, normally it's a last resort.
Yeah.
So you can think of a performance bond if developers should tend to allow the developer every opportunity to work first. One back is an interesting one because there's other things being associated with it that stops the highways being adopted. So you know, you might have an adoption for highways, but there might be other works that need to be done by the developers as well, just greater bonds. Things like that.
Yeah.
But it's something usually it's a default protection.
I suppose if you take the bond away, that's their last remaining incentive to get them to get over the line, actually.
You take the bond and do the work. You claim the bond to get the work done.
Yes, we based it on the infrastructure they're going to build, and then ask for the bond value of that amount. Right. Whether it's actually sufficient.
I was going to say, because 10 years in the case of one bank, obviously inflation in that time.
Well, that's the problem, is the bond would have been set 10 years ago when they did the development agreement. So the work to do the work now would be much more than that because of inflation. So the longer they leave it, the better position the developer's in.
Yes, it's one back one.
That's the road.
Cardiff Road.
Cardiff Road goes between sort of Maze Glass and
It's another area the road's not been installed in.
Yeah. So there isn't much resource put into kind of chasing down developers to you know, fulfill their obligations.
We do, we've got ongoing discussions with developers.
Yeah.
And we do raise issues of when it was adopted, you know, anytime there's a consideration for residents.
Are we being robust enough, do you think, in terms of the conversations that we're having and the expectations we're expecting from them? You know,
I think it's a fair challenge, and there is resource that goes into that. I would say like the type of when I stick my nose into it, it's challenging on both sides.
Yeah.
And so, you know, developers often have a lot of resource to perhaps not be as helpful as we'd like. Yeah. The challenge often we're left with is something hasn't been done correctly. The council can't adopt it.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to be done. That's going to be done. That's going to be done. If you draw the line earlier, actually, you know, in all those instances, we have to take advice from our legal comments on what is proportionate. It does, you know, I agree. It sometimes feels like a long time. It does feels like the standard is really high, but I'm not aware of, you know, other authorities intervening at the lower part that I think is a bit more reasonable. Still, it's quite a big thing to do. And as soon as you do it, you'll have to put big lawyers the other side. So we got to be sure that we're robust in that. So, you know, all the times to think like tomorrow people.
Can I ask, when these estates are adopted, will you get proportionately more funding to maintain those roads? Where will that money come from? Will Welsh Government allocate us extra funds because we know we get funds based on head count, as it were. Do we get extra funding based on the newly adopted road counts as well?
It doesn't quite work like that.
I don't know.
In theory, there's a general allowance, but there's quite a lag on that. It's very relatively small. But if you look at, in essence, if you look at the amount that Welsh Government Newport gets each year, is slightly higher than the average. It is higher because we're growing, and that's because we've got more roads, we've got more people, we've got more etc. So in some ways, it is accounted for, but it's never quite sufficient because the pie stays the same. It's just Newport percentage that pie gets a bit bigger. So if you've got more, like, where's this analogy go? The more people eating the same pie. I don't know where that analogy.
Well, it all ends up with UK government needing to give us more, doesn't it? That's the only.
Everyone's going to be hungry, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And just a final point, if I can, the sort of street lighting network then, and we talked about sort of the opportunities for solar earlier on and whether that's sort of There are a number of authorities now looking at sort of putting car charges onto the street lights and powering. Is that an opportunity to generate some revenue income, which can then be sort of earmarked for upgrading the street lights to kind of reduce the costs overall? Is that something we can explore?
Certainly, we're looking at utilising our streetlight columns to be able to utilise car charges as well. Typically, if it's any different, we will look to engage with session operator for those EV charging points, be they standalone EV charging points, or be they run off streetlights, and the agreement will then be
Share.
They may in future generate that. At the moment, we're trying, obviously, it's an area of rapid change. It's probably the biggest infrastructure change since streetlights, actually, electric charging facilities. So, we've got a number of, we've got rapid hubs, we've got lots of tourist places in terms of thinking about off-street parking, as we said. So we've got some going into light columns, we've got some going into standalone units, some into trying different trading methods. So, there's a lot of investment going on that effectively the private sector is absorbing the cost of that, so they need to get a bit of a return. As take-up improves, I think that situation will change, as we move towards 2030 and requirements that business model will change. It seems a bit fluid at the moment.
Challenge with that piece that they'll all know in the back of the football instead of front.
I know. There is, but there's different,
I see the challenge.
I was going to say the capital thing. I mean, maybe something, because again, when we come back with the climate change strategy stuff, but it's I think that's the commitment. But anyway, there's different options, different solutions available.
Did you want to come in with your
No,
question?
I'll email it through. It's,
Sure.
yeah, it's a generic question anyway. It was to do with the 21 speed.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee on the highways asset management plan, or can we look to wrap up our recommendation for number 4? Okay. That's okay.
Well, I got chair from Council Horton's inquiry about analysing data of the road repairs from service providers, how long it lasts, and consider taking on the data to look at further.
Yeah.
Other than that,
It's not so much a recommendation, but again, I think it's more of a legal issue at a higher level. But charging utility companies for access to our roads and the repairs that they do, because if they're continually digging up our roads and leaving them in a worse condition than what they found them, and there needs to be some kind of compensation as a result. They're going back time and time again. Either the repairs first time weren't good, or they've not put the infrastructure in place to make sure it's a long-lasting repair. Then they're leaving our roads and pavements in a worse condition they found them. Then there needs to be either some compensation, or they need to be making some contribution.
Yeah, I mean, you alluded to a fine system when we talked. There is a fine system, and you said it's sort of the last resort, didn't you? Really, it's not something you look to do all the time.
They're making money off the back of residents every month. All these companies are in profit.
We could come back to it as sort of a recommendation for information collected to come back with further information.
Yeah.
Was it a recommendation that we try and facilitate feedback to members on the causes of electric of lighting being out?
Yeah.
Maybe you're just blessed, Mark.
No,
It hasn't worked for me.
I was lucky at that.
Never see the traffic signals going. The might take some of the crashes in this area, but that's right straight through. But
but I think that's a wider point in terms of customer service, is it, rather than specific to sort of highway asset? Because the same point could be made in relation to lots of other reports, waste and for example. So it's probably a wider customer service.
Well, it's maybe a recommendation to customer service, but it's rather difficult, when you've got no indication of what the problem is and whether it's a council problem or not. We've got people getting hot under the collar, as actually one of the 2 complaints I sent in last night. you know, where somebody's actually been quite personal towards the council about it being their fault when it's not our fault.
So I
And
think
we're not in a position, it goes back to this statutory services business again. They can get away with merger. I didn't really come across this until we're up against Network Rail over the road bridge coming out to the railway station, where basically they gave a presentation to full council and were very dismissive of council's concerns over the disruption of the city. I think it might have been before your time, Paul.
I know the issue is amazing.
Yeah.
So I think the minute is probably around, you know, the committee noted frustration with obtaining detailed information
From the statutory services.
well, from the council about when repairs fall outside of the council's responsibility, and the service area will look at how they can feed that back in line with the ongoing customer service review. Is that fair enough? Is everybody happy with that? Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah.
Any further comments, recommendations the committee would like to make in relation to the report?
Yeah, well, not really a report, someone mentioned it, it was the brass verges, whether they can be addressed long term. Just do a suitable solution that also kind of maintains the drainage aspect, but improves the aesthetic look.
I think the recommendation has to be that the cabinet look to invest additional sums, because I think what you're saying is the money you've got at the moment means that you can't do that.
Within this handbook, what we're going to do is make the best use of the resources we've got
Yeah.
in order to address the core assets we've got. There's loads of, you know, it's not dismissing any of those concerns. They're all concerns, you know, that
Yeah.
we would have an improvement. And some of those are tackled through other means. We talked about the active travel, didn't we? There is an active travel. And some of those need the additional grants for those sort of things.
Yeah.
In terms of the grass verges, recognise it is a problem, but in reality is within this hand, we've got to address our core assets first.
Yeah. So it's a capital investment that we'd be recommending additional money for to do, if that's what the committee would recommend. Effectively. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm happy with that recommendation. Is everybody else happy with that recommendation? Yeah. Yeah. Nods from everyone. That's fine. I also raised the point around the sort of resource that goes into the section 106 funding, and you sort of committed to go away and look at that in a bit more detail, I think. And this £4.5 million worth, I think it's about 4.5 million roughly. It's between 4 and 4.5 million of section 106 money, which the highways team will look to put some resource into resolving whether we can spend some of that money to improve the infrastructure.
And a schedule of, if it's possible, a schedule of the major repairs that will take place in the highways.
Yeah.
So the work start.
Yeah, you've got to be careful how you publish that. You've got to be careful you don't commit to something.
No, but even if it's just way away.
I wonder whether the recommendations to sort of give notice.
Yeah, which I think we did
Once
do. I
you-
think
yeah.
with last year's programme, where there was about 12 roads, 6 services, 6 treatments, we did make sure that ward councillors were aware in a few days advance notice or weeks advance notice. So the ward councillors did know they were happening.
Yeah.
I think if you're asking for a list up front, the issue is, like Paul said, you don't actually know how much fixed amount of money allocated if you're going to get to the bottom of that list. And then if you've said you're going to do it.
It's just a nice way to ban off negativity.
Yeah, I
So
understand
when you're
why
being badged
yeah.
at abatement, Cambridge, for example, is going to be fixed this year.
I think we can have a think about it and we just weigh the pros and cons of doing it.
I don't.
You know,
So,
but it's
Yeah.
I mean, the recommendation is to review the way that the service area communicates its capital programme in terms of timings to members of the public and general ward councillors outside of their wards, something like that.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Everybody happy with that?
Yes, we did do comments on the social media comments on schemes as well.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Which as we went.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of the stuff around George Street Bridge and Chepstow Road, which sort of went out on the council.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe we can do the roads that we serve and maybe we might get a few surprises there.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it might be that. Yeah.
It's the game where they lift the box and you get the money.
That's right. You ships the Okay, any other recommendations which the committee wanted to make? Okay, thank you very much for a really interesting debate.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Antiquated electric boxes, TARDISes, are they structures?
Yes. It depends, no. They won't be our structures.
It's fine.
The vast majority of them
Or
are.
is council like that?
Yeah,
No, it's fine.
that's it. Yeah, unless you're talking about.
No, we won't about the one that's
Yeah,
been
we-
returned.
Oh, that's the.
It's listed.
Yeah, it is listed. It's listed as ours. Yeah, there's a few old ones, and there's a couple of strange pipes that stick up just at the road here as well, which. But
Thanks all. Thanks a lot.
It is an application, or it's a
it
structure.
looks like it is one of ours. I think that'll be in that miscellaneous category.
Right. No funding for it anyway.
So structures are generally things like big bridges.
Yes.
Um,
I know that,
culverts,
yeah.
yeah,
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 they've
big
got the
retaining walls.
comprehensive link.
So they tend.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
miscellaneous. I think that's.
Okay, sorry. Right, thanks everybody. Thanks for your patience. I thought we might run over a little bit, but I didn't want to run over that much, so I do apologise. Okay, we are on to the culture strategy now. So thanks everybody for your patience. We've got the cabinet member here, and then the agenda sort of offers a presentation. I don't know if the cabinet member wants to introduce or whether you just want to crack on with the presentation. So, Councillor Corton, if you want to say anything, please do.
Happy to crack on. Thank you.
No problem. Over to you then, Tracy. Thank you. Paul.
No, I'll pass straight.
Yeah.
No one wants you to be waffle anymore. I'll shut up now for a bit.
Okay, thank you for having us here today to talk to you about the Newport Culture Strategy. Next slide, please. By way of a bit of a background, so Counterculture were commissioned to develop the city's first culture strategy, and this strategy aligns to Objective 2 of the Regeneration and Economic Development Service Plan, which focuses on improving and promoting the culture and heritage of the city. The cultural strategy is not for the council alone and belongs to everyone who contributes to the city's unique culture and heritage. It's very much a partnership approach, and that's how we have approached this development of the strategy and how we see it being delivered. So just next slide, please. Sorry, I have to use this next slide. So just in terms of Newport in context, did you know that Newport has over 5,000 creative industry jobs, and that is obviously including any of these identified as a freelancer. We have 265 creative enterprises, and that represents 5% of the creative sector in Wales. We have the fastest sector growth in Wales between 2015 and 2022. We have over 40 cultural venues in the city, 14 recording studios, and 4 creative workspace hubs. Thank you. Okay, so culture and heritage is central to our partnerships and the future of our community. There's some amazing work and activities taking place by local groups within our communities. Newport Story is one of resilience, industry and diversity. It's important the culture strategy reflects Newport in an authentic and original way. The strategy has therefore been developed in collaboration with a range of stakeholders and members of the public. In terms of engagement and consultation, over 2,000 people engaged and were consulted in the following ways. We had a steering group which comprised of leading and representative organisations, including Tinshed, Theatre, Urban Circle, Race Council Cymru. There was the Dragons on there, Chartist Group, Newport Rising, yeah, so a whole range of different organisations and in the Welsh group as well. The 2 bilingual public surveys, so a long form and short form survey that was done between August and October 2024. There are also direct interviews with key stakeholders. County Culture team attended major events including the Big Splash and Maidie Festival to engage directly with people attending those events to understand their views on culture and heritage in the city of Newport. There was also focus groups and workshops, and some of those were undertaken by our partners in order to make sure that we were engaging with the right people and getting the maximum number of views and opinions on Newport and our culture. Next slide, please. The engagement results evidence a good balance of views. So there was strong engagement with younger age groups, so 36% of all respondents were under the age of 24. There was a slight underrepresentation of older age groups, but this was addressed, as I mentioned, through the dedicated workshops that some of our partners held. 15% of respondents were resident outside of Newport. More respondents identified as female than male, that was 54%, and over 600 responses were from people attending school, college or university in the city. So from the engagement undertaken, a number of themes were identified and 4 priorities have been developed with our partners and focus on developing a sustainable, equitable cultural sector that provides opportunities for everyone and lets everyone know what those opportunities are so that our residents and visitors can enjoy our brilliant city together. So priority 1 is about destination and looking at Newport as a place to visit and promote to residents and tourists. So this is looking at how sites, buildings and heritage assets are curated and maintained, having a proactive and cohesive marketing offer, developing and delivering a cohesive and integrated events programme, ensuring culture and heritage is integrated within our regeneration programme. Thank you. Priority 2 is about communities creating culture. So it's about improving participation in and access to cultural events, using culture to help improve health and well-being in Newport, increasing the use of Welsh and reflecting Welsh being a valued part of Newport's culture, and also encouraging sector leadership to be diverse and representative of Newport. Priority 3 is about growing skills for culture and making sure we are fulfilling our potential. By doing that, we're going to be helping the creative economy to grow from grassroots community groups through to larger and more established institutions, and also ensuring young people are able to access creative pathways by working with schools and higher education to support awareness and career development. Please. Priority 4 is about enduring culture and making sure that our unique culture is protected, celebrated and promoted. We will look to do this through establishing a clear operating model for the cultural strategy, creating strong networks between culture and other sectors, helping the culture and creative sector to understand environmental impact and contribute to our collective net zero targets, and finally by helping groups and organisations to access funding and improve their funding resilience. That's the culture strategy in a nutshell, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anything you want to add, or shall I open it up to the floor? No? Yeah. Bob, any questions? Well, just a point I wouldn't mind making to start with, if that's all right, Chair. Just want to congratulate Cabinet Member Emma Cord for the work that she's done since she's taken on this part of her portfolio. I think it's been significant and noticeable differences over the past year, and I'm speaking to lots of people who are noticing the change within the recognition of culture in Newport and how so much more seems to be going on. So well done, Emma, on that.
Thanks, Nat. That's very nice of you.
I mean, this is really, really important. I mean, we should have been investing in culture in Newport years ago, and I think that we've missed a few opportunities over the past 20 years. And we've lost some really iconic buildings, and that's not our fault as a local authority.
but there are a number of places within Newport that fall into rack and ruin that are still there, but nothing's being done with them, that are really important to our culture. And I know, Emma, I've discussed this with you, you know, before you took on this role, but TJ's been a perfect example. You know, that was an iconic status, and means so much to Newport. It gets referenced so much, but it's still in Clan's place, gathering, well, not even gathering dust, gathering mold. I think that long term, I think we need to be identifying some of our iconic buildings, our iconic businesses at the moment, and maybe considering what has happened at the pub. And I know that's external funding, Emma, but looking at, you know, pubs like the Murringer at the moment, you know, it's been around for a long, long time. It's owned by a brewery, but it's possibly facing one of the toughest years ahead, you know, as pubs and restaurants are, because of the current state of the economic outlook of the country. But whether or not as a local authority we can consider looking at some of our iconic businesses, buildings, cultural assets, and seeing if there's any more support that we can offer them.
Is that, do you want to come back on that? But it'd be useful to understand what sort of how place fits into culture as well, because lots of that was about
the placemaking.
Yeah, so I think there are lots of synergies and overlaps between some of these strategies for the development, and certainly we're making sure that they do align and they do sort of speak to each other. There's a number of different initiatives ongoing with some of our sort of real problem properties, and we've mentioned TJ's in another hat on the service plan. So there is lots of focus on doing that. But I think iconic buildings such as TJ's will come under that destination priority that we've mentioned. So we're very mindful of that. But it's all about making sure that we can bring those buildings back into some meaningful use. Wouldn't it be great to get the iconic TJ's nightclub back in?
Yeah, probably not as a nightclub, but just something whereby it doesn't turn into another supermarket retail outlet, for example, or it doesn't turn into littered in many high streets, around businesses that we don't need any more of.
But more crucial is actually getting the people who appreciate the music, who support the music, and who help Newport take its place back again, contributing to the development of the music industry, specifically in Wales. But I mean, let's not limit our sites here. Europe-wise, perhaps.
Absolutely, but we have to allow people using these buildings and these facilities. So
that's as well. I see what you mean about crossing over, because that's part of the placemaking strategy as well, isn't it? Yeah, this is really quite people focused, isn't it?
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, Councillor Pym, it's almost been a missing part of some of our sort of strategic planning, our strategies. We identified that we've got so much to celebrate and so much to acknowledge and promote in terms of the culture of Newport, that this has been a long time coming. So I'm really pleased that we've been able to sort of bring this to you today before we take it to cabinet.
Really about the process that you've gone through with stakeholders and partners. I know that it's in the report that you reached out and got opinions from 2,000 people. And I certainly recognise how difficult it is to get to people to feedback on things. What a tremendous effort, and it's costly in time and all the rest of it. Motivation, thinking of the right questions for the right age groups and things. But I'm aware that perhaps some opportunities were missed where maybe at least another 500 people could have been picked up. Things like the 50+ forum. And I was at a meeting of theirs this morning. I specifically asked if they knew about this and if they'd been reached out to, and I found that they hadn't. And if the consultation organisation perhaps went around a bit longer, I can't remember whether it was, I think it was beginning of October or the end of September, but because we had a wonderful 50+ information event where there was although it was smaller than what we've managed to deliver in previous years, there were a stack of people there and so many different partner organisations who also would have had an opinion that could have fed into this, but I don't know who would have spoken to, representing the older age group. But you know, it struck me because I've got a lot of engagement with perhaps other groups. You know, that we missed out on something there.
You want to come back on that point?
Yeah, just to come in on the engagement piece, obviously, Kate, as you'd expect, sorry, Councillor Thomas, as you'd expect with me, I was very keen to ensure that we communicated this and offered as many people opportunities to you know, have their say as possible. And what we actually found was that it was getting to the younger members of the city that was very difficult. And these are the people, obviously, it's a plan that we hope will go over 10 years. And these are the people who in 10 years time will be paying their taxes, and we want them to stay here and live in the city. So we didn't really, and Tracy and Matt can correct me on this, we didn't really have a huge amount of issues getting towards the upper age demographics. It was those younger people, but we did put a lot of, I sent it back a couple of times just to push to get that extra engagement and get those extra comments from as many people as possible. I was probably a bit of a pain.
Yeah. Thanks for being so candid about that, Emma, because they were a bit, when I said, you know, we might have not spoken to many of them and none of them had heard about it this morning, but thank you for that response. All right, I can see that. Back to the.
And we'll keep that in mind for further things as well. Thank you.
Just a brief bit of context. So we've said that we had that slight indirect representation of fast as an overall percentage, but it does reflect that 36% of the 2,000 responding was for under 24. That is a landslide by any sort of measure of, you know, in terms of the amount of young people who really engaged with sport to tell us what they thought. So if we take as the overall percentage of all people was significant, but it's just way before by that inflated number of young people who've on this subject would be engaged.
Well, this is one of these gains from the use of tech now, isn't it? They're a demographic who are a lot easier to get reached in that way than the older population.
Well, I think it's the subject, to be honest, more than you, because we've done other similar replacement plan. We have shown young people to get them use the same methods, but
if it interests you, and you know, yeah, probably I can say generalising, you know, the younger generation, perhaps without some of the financial commitments that perhaps a sort of, you know, sort of middle-aged families or sort of 30-odd-year-old family might have more disposable income, would be using those sort of, you know, cultural places and places to go and sort of places to meet people and all the rest of it. So it's an area with which sort of, you know, excites people and interests them in it, and that's where you get engagement, is when you put something in front of someone that they want to engage you with. So that's why probably people didn't respond to the highways asset management plan, you know. So
is the report as we read it, as was presented to us, is that going to change at all? Because I was a bit confused about why the opening pages on the case studies of Communities House in Maindy, because it should have been for I did make a note of it somewhere. It actually would have been far more meaningful to stick it in with one of the other sections further down.
It is very much a draft count, so it's still playing around beforehand, and the graphics and all the rest of it will go into the final strategy. It's just that's the text has been prepared.
It's not the final version. It's not the final version.
Yeah, it's just etc. But we haven't included all the imagery and stuff yet.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my feedbacks. Actually, was around the imagery. I think it could be.
It'd be very visual.
Yeah, much more visual in terms of sort of, you know, what wanting people to read it. It's very wordy. Just because it's a public document, you know, that's not criticism, because the words have a lot of meaning, but it's how you capture that.
And just to come in on that as well, I've shared with Tracy and we've talked about digesting it into a plan on a page as well. So you have the document, which is great, but there's a plan on a page as well, which is a more accessible version. That's a quick hit kind of version, and then people could go behind the detail.
You could almost kind of infographic it, couldn't you? You know, because you will be able to capture those things that you want to capture as kind of infographics and numbers and stuff. You know? Yeah, definitely. Sorry, yeah.
It's a bit of a contentious point. I'm probably be so sensitive with the wording that I use. I'm not even make point. But looking through a lot of the examples in here of where funding has been allocated and events have taken place, so a lot of it is aimed at minority groups. It appears that you know, some of the examples that have been raised have been in certain communities that, you know, are underrepresented, not really understood, and are fairly new to the local area, you know, possibly in the last 30, 40 years. I think as part of what's glaringly obvious to me is there doesn't seem to be an awful lot in there about the majority, and that being white males who have lived in Newport.
Why just males?
Well, white women and men who have lived in Newport for a long time. And again, part of this cultural strategy is, you know, seeing more and more men reporting issues with mental health, suicide rates for males between the ages of 30 and 50 at an all-time high. As part of the cultural strategy, is any part of it going to be aimed at what you just consider to be the majority, which is your average white male? You know, Mark, me and you, we went to the same school, you know, talking about the people that were of our age category at the moment, mid-40s, struggling with it, well, struggling with adaptation to, you know, many parts of modern life, and kind of ignored because this is so obvious. You know, which part of it represents your traditional Newportonian that doesn't like indie music, that doesn't like art, that doesn't like most of the stuff that's in here, you know, dance.
What are you referring to, Matt, that would fall into a culture strategy that isn't art, dance, music or theatre?
I don't know, a platform for an average white man.
Yeah, so obviously the cultural strategy covers art, dance, music, theatre, and making culture accessible to everyone across the city, and I was very keen on that as well. But obviously, I don't.
It's a definition of what culture is, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think bandying around sort of saying that the city, the majority of the population of the city is an average white man probably isn't a fair representation of Newport either, if we're honest. But if we look at the culture strategy, the plan is that it's accessible to everyone, and that over the 10 years, the community groups, the culture groups, the venues, whoever owns it has a responsibility to make sure when they adopt it, when, you know, they've all fed into this, that we make sure that it reaches the whole city, because that's true inclusivity then, is that it reaches the whole city and everyone in it. And Tracy and Matt, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I was just going to pick it up what's around mental health. So I don't think that's the reason anyone pick the cultural group or age, and the board that can affect anybody, but I think that's the first point when you get the cultural strategy that we developed in the board is presented. That link is between health and well-being and culture, and you come to events, joining community events, and take something away from it. So as part of the actions and outcomes, there'll be an onus on the delivery group to set up the partners of sign up for the cultural strategy to give great consideration for people with diagnosed health issues, neurodiversity, sensory issues. It's very supportive about our broad aspiration for all people to take advantage and find these events and programs accessible. I think it's quite unique to our strategy as well. There's an outcome around improved health and well-being, and great network between, as part of that, links between culture and the other sectors around between health and well-being. We'll be looking at things like increased spend in terms of cultural events for people in poor communities, irrespective of academic, particularly experiencing important challenges. So things like that written as objectives and deliverables from the plan. I think that issue is in your engine around culture as a means of improving health and well-being is quite distinct as a feature.
But in cities like Newport, the kind of small middle-sized cities, post-industrial, again, we've been compared in the past. There's a place like Newport is, you know, society does feel quite divisive at the moment. Again, linked to, you know, extreme material, online, etc. But it's that culture within Newport, some of the traditions that have existed in Newport, working ladies clubs, for example, many of them before by the wayside, is no real preservation of how as a local authority could we preserve that past, which has been so significant to Newport. So apart from the licence building and being brought back into public usage, so many more not working clubs, social clubs are closing by the wayside. Is there anything in terms of what we could do to think about, even as a local authority, buying one of those and taking one open and keeping one of those, so it doesn't just fall into another block of flats? Because that's been a massive part of our development as a town into a city, and our industrial past really, that will be lost and won't be, you know, once it's gone, it's gone. I mean, the old Working Men's Club now is a block of flats. It's nothing, you know, and many more of them are suffering hardship, and we seem to, you know, focus a lot on performance, which is great. I think there's an element of our culture as a city, of the past 100 years, it's just passing us by. Once it's gone, as I keep mentioning. Can that be kind of tied in some way to the way that culture is? It's an awkward conversation. I don't know if I'll get my point.
I think you kind of, and Tracy and Matt, you could glare at me and correct me here. You kind of away from the point of the culture strategy. The culture strategy isn't about pubs as such. It's about entertainment. It's about lifestyle. It's about those things that we do that enrich our lives, and it's about how we can create, about the industry that surrounds that, you know, the creative industries in the city. I do understand what you're saying about working men's clubs and all those sorts of things. I'm not, Paul, you could correct me here, I'm not sure it's in the gift of the authority to buy a working men's club and kind of keep that running, but I understand what you're saying. But we should all, in my opinion as well, we should also think that if those things were successful, there would be a business doing them already. If there was a business model for it. Officers, I'll let you take over.
Yeah, I think quite a bit of what we can do, honestly, in terms of sort of transport, tourism industry, improving the rate reduction stuff that we had last year and the like. But yeah, it's a demand and supply thing, isn't it? If the demand isn't there, it's very difficult for some of those businesses.
I think we're in danger of going down a rabbit hole here, because I think when you talk about working men's clubs, you know, I don't regret the passing of those, and we've lost the working men's clubs in Stonehill. There's nothing like that now, and the reason there is nothing like that now is because they weren't sufficiently supported. We've moved on, and I think this document here is actually about moving on, going forward into the future. The vibrancy and the difference in Newport. You know, 25 years I've lived here now, and with what we have gained through having a wider diversity of population here, you know, and I look at examples of that who are living and breathing, and the future generations, for example, in St Worth School, and it's fabulous, and I know they're only out to the regions of the city, and I think this is what we're hoping that we can get an insight to from this document, because, you know, we can only take this opportunity to get that insight, and then we can actually make some sort of plans for the future. There were a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. There's reference to GVA, which I presume is gross value added. Yeah, and I just wondered how things like that were calculated. What I would actually like to see here, though, I was really disappointed that a lot of these figures only went up to 2022. You know, we need you in your team's expertise to do the projections here. You know, we know that the city, there's no reference. There's references to where we are now, but it says that the city's grown by X in the last 10 years. But what we know that we're going to continue growing, so we want the figures on that. We want the projections based around the increases in population. You know, and we just had this conversation previously with Paul about the way in which the funding will increase. You know, how that proportionality will equate to the number of extra people living, and what we can actually put into this to develop it further.
Just on the point of the dates, we are relying in some instances on national statistics for voice for that, and there's obviously lag with that. They collect it through the census, etc., and they take a lot of that through particularly also the economic data. This includes.
I think it's unfortunate it covers that COVID period, because that was nothing but destructive for everything. So I don't really. I prefer to whitewash that. I don't want to remember anything that went on through that time at all.
We're still showing positive growth in terms of our cultural creative sector. Yes.
So I want that's why I want the forward planning.
There was an impact at the same time. A lot of people were doing more more content online, and a lot of our freelancers in particular like to go with TV and improve their business by doing more online content. So it's a really sort of granular context with lots of different elements to consider. But yeah, just on that point, we are using most of the data, and we are using definitions of when we look at the economic sort of piece, we are using definitions of businesses which are set by UK government, and that's reforming these national statistics to track that growth. So also it is a little bit retrospective, and there is a lag as we go forward with the cultural strategy. Our data will be collected and be consistent, and we can see hopefully improvement and sustainability in the sector, more businesses, more freelancers by tracking that there. So points, and we'll still have that doing the show non sort of improvement.
This isn't fixed now in time. It's going to be a live document, and you come back to us and will report to us presumably. And some of the aspirations of this may change. The priorities might change or shift. The weighting of it might shift.
So the way we were going to report on this was through the service plan, because it's a priority project in the service plan. So we're going to give them that data by the service plan. She'll have that half year, and then we can look at what performance measures we can get.
And some KPIs would include, what we want to achieve about, and some smart ones effectively sort of look at that. I think we have to 2 seconds. Okay, we have to put the sort of cultural strategy in the context of what we're trying to achieve, and the recent sort of acquisition of the pub is probably something fairly unique that isn't going to continue to happen. And I don't see the plan saying the council intends to go and get funding to acquire lots of these historical or cultural sites that sort of have a sort of heritage or a cultural link to the city, and we need to preserve them. I think I can't see the funding being out there all the time. I certainly don't read the strategy as suggesting that's what we're going to do. What we need to do is support and facilitate those sectors that deliver from those venues. So we're not going to go and buy a
No, but that's what I'm saying is that's the stage, though. That's the platform. So if you're in the performance, whether that be music, dance, drama, you need a stage. You need somewhere that you can perform. When we lose these venues, we're losing places to perform. So what is really important? Well, the moment
from the people on Saturday night,
because the business model,
it's not culture. That's not what this strategy is.
No, but it is culture, because if you can't perform, you haven't got an outlet to perform. If you haven't got a stage, then it all dries up. You need that place whereby the audience can gather. If that's going to be outside, that's great, but then you're open to the elements. And so within Newport, tying into this cultural strategy, and we've got a few, new places that have come about, place being one, Corn Exchange, another one, is we need to think that you need to keep up with the demand for performance. And that's, I think my point to Emma is, where over the next 10 years, if pubs start to fail, then they're not play, limited places where bands can perform. Bands can't perform, what they're going to do, they're going to perform and record it online, and that's the only access to see a live band. So how does this tie in with, in terms of venues, and is what I'm getting at, the preservation of venues?
So I think it's important. I think it's gone back to what Mark said, actually, that it's not the council's plan. It's part of the service plan, but this is in the ownership of the creative industries, and it's our support that will help them. Le Pub was a one-off that was purchased by the Music Venues Trust, and I know they'd love to buy every live music venue that they serve. That's not every live music venue in the country, obviously. That's just the ones that are signed up members to the Music Venues Trust. It's not for us to continue to acquire buildings and performance spaces, but it is for us, Tracy, Paul and Matt, you're all looking at me like you're worried I'm going to say something wrong. It is for us to support them where we can, and to encourage a working group where everyone works together to support each other as well, talking about funding opportunities, talking about, we look at the music trail is a brilliant example, and the Sea Shanty Festival is a brilliant example of everyone working together to create something in the city and to make something happen, and that's NCC along with external partners. And I think that is what lies at the base of this strategy, is everyone working together to support each other. It's not about us acquiring various assets, because I don't think we want more assets. Really, we've got, you know, enough to do with the ones that we've got. Paul, Tracy, Matt, please feel free to correct me on that one.
I think you're spot on there, cabinet member. You know, the council aren't in the business of running pubs, clubs and restaurants. So, you know, I think it is very much about that partnership approach of helping other people see an opportunity and supporting them with developing that and delivering something that is viable, you know, and commercially viable use. Because, you know, we could all do lots of things, but unless you've got the people there to use it and enjoy it, sustain it, it's you know, that's where the problems come.
Can I mention we've had really been quite upset about a number of very negative news stories that have gone out recently about city centre, my ward in particular. And I've gone down and I've made visits to businesses. We've done walkabouts in the city centre. We've addressed all the issues. We've tried to find out what people have really feel about these things, and some of it's been quite different from some of the newspaper articles. And I think that we need to try and, you know, we're not being terribly successful at the moment about letting people know what's here. And I'm wondering if you mentioned about working with the Welsh Tourism Board, whatever they call it now, I can't remember, Visit Wales or something, isn't it? And somebody,
they're not very good at promoting themselves.
Clearly not. But I was wondering, just the simple things like actually putting up advertising in places like Cardiff Station, except that I'm always very disappointed that the trains don't run back to Newport at any decent early hours of the morning, you know. But, you know, places like this where you get thousands of people passing through who may be looking for actually an alternative to Chip Street or whatever it's called, or Wing Street in Swansea, you know, and actually going out and letting people in Bristol know that what we've got here in, you know, it's probably easier to get to actually than Cardiff, which is only 10 miles down the road, you know, and Bath, places like this, you know, where I think we're trying to develop something which in a few years' time they won't be able to get hold of in other cities.
I think, you know, sorry. I was just going to say something we've picked up on in service area plans about the sort of what's on stuff, and you know, probably we have sort of looked through it in quite a bit of detail. Don't know how much it links in particular to this strategy and the what's on, or how the two tie together, but perhaps you could sort of try and address the both in the answer, if that's okay.
So we're currently working on a destination management plan, which includes how we market Newport, where we market Newport and who we market Newport to. And obviously we've got the What's On site, which I would encourage you all to look and share and put any events that you're involved in on there as well, because that's growing, and that is fed through to Newport City Radio site and an RSS feeds, and we're growing that and people are getting more involved, which is great. So that we are looking at ways that, because we don't shout about everything enough, we're not very good at saying, talking about all the great things that happen in Newport. So for the music trail, I know there's a lovely marketing campaign that's been built by our wonderful comms team and our wonderful destination officers that includes things like digital radio, adverts over in Bristol, Cardiff, all those sorts of things. And I know there's a lovely campaign of What's On advertising just about to come to fruition, Trace, in the next couple of weeks as well. So we are on it. I am aware that that is the thing we need to get better at, and it'll all come out in the destination plan and the placemaking plan. When all these all come together, it'll start happening. We'll have an idea of the best tactics to take.
Right. That's what we've back to the cultural strategy is it really ranges the links between the different cultural offers in Newport, and the things part around things like joint ticketing, joint marketing, so exchange because we've done as well as those joint ticket both to attend those, so that's really the cultural strategy we're focused on. Is required time and people perception.
Yeah, Councillor Linton.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, I was going to reply to Matt's questions regarding workmen's clubs and the like. I got to declare an interest because I'm a trustee on one, but that seemed to pass by now, and I couldn't de-raise my hand, as it were. There's nothing on there to take my hand down.
No, that's okay. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Point?
Yeah, again, I've raised this with Emma previously, and I've mentioned it before. Again, where can we store 100 tables and 20 gazebos? I think. What is it? Yeah, no, well, no. But as you know, I'm involved in a community group that puts events on. But again, you're speaking to other small groups similar to us, and one of the issues that we got is storage and also access to tables, gazebos, all the rest of it, to be able to put events on. And it would be nice if that was centralised in some way or organised, whereby there was again, if we could get some grant funding for it, but just support from the local authority, really, on a storage area to put all this stuff.
Yeah, I think there is something that I have to think that because this we have been trying to look at in terms of the practicality of it, see if there's anyone else to consider.
I know you took an action away. I'm just going to say you took an action away from the service.
Here. Have we got
vaults?
We got plenty of vaults.
Yeah,
nothing stayed dry then.
And Matt, I know we spoke about this in the summer, didn't we? And it was like, who would manage that, who would oversee that? And I think that you were going to go away and think about that sort of thing. So maybe this is something we could pick up offline in a couple of weeks after Mad March.
Yeah. I think it's a point well made around what is the council's role in facilitating culture in the city. How can we help? And actually, that's feedback from your community group, which I know others have said, and it was a topic we raised, but that's the whole point of this, isn't it? What is our role as facilitating? What does the community need from us? And there's been some feedback on the cultural strategy, but I don't know if we've unpicked that question yet. I don't know if it comes out in here yet. What practical help do people need to kind of facilitate delivering, cultural events and all the rest of it?
Yeah. So I think that's like a level of detail that's not contained in the strategy, but will form part of the ongoing work that we're doing. So once we've adopted this strategy, it doesn't stop there.
Absolutely.
The priorities make sure this continues, evolves, and grows, and reflects the change.
I would like to know how we recreate community centres within the Stow Hill area. The city centre has no non-denominational places where it can. Well, we've got the place now, but even the place the place is doing so well. It has such a wide range of work with other partners and stakeholders that I think it'd be very difficult to grab any space or time down there. But certainly we've got nothing in the way that we used to have. But I see this as being a separate issue, really, to what is being discussed here. I think.
You're right.
Maybe through this plan we could develop the sort of groups that would be interested in sorting something out for themselves. But at the moment, that coordination is not there to recreate new new versions of the community centres that we had.
Yeah. Okay. Question for me. One of the challenges I sort of see, if you like, is we've got a number of great sort of sites and things that deliver culture around the city, but it's really difficult to public transport all those things. So if I wanted to go out to Clear and have a look at the Roman Amphitheatre and then go, I don't know, to Transport Bridge and have a look at that, difficult to get around the city and do that. And the bit that I don't see in here is kind of how we facilitate the kind of movement of getting people to places and stuff. And I don't know if that's something that we can sort of factor in terms of delivery.
So I think that links back to the destination management plan. So how do we manage Newport as a destination, and how do we make those attractions there? How do we move people around the city, and what are the gaps, I suppose? So
20 years ago, there was an open top tour bus.
Yeah.
What did we have to show them then? because we've got so much more than we used to have. What can anybody?
You know, but actually,
There's a small
something
promise
like that, is that a viable
what did
option
they go
for
to
kind of
see?
destination
I
management?
see
It's a
you
fair
went
point.
around at the time.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That's definitely.
Yeah, and yes, we talked about it at the start, but the cultural strategy does sort of cut across a number of strategies. And actually, you might talk about it in the pre-meeting, we, that, you know, because we haven't even touched on the sort of city centre and the placemaking strategy overall, you know, because a number of sort of outcome one is places, or places at that point I've been at the start. But how you kind of, you know, think your culture to your places, and actually, you know, why do people go to London? Often it's just to look around the place, look around the architecture. We've got some fantastic buildings in Newport. How do we facilitate that element? You know, how do you get people to look at it as well? You know, it's a kind of real point. So if that's the place element of culture, so I've gone off piece a bit, but it is that as well, isn't it? You kind of something to. Any other questions, points?
This is just one more point, and again, I might have missed it in there on the slide. Is, can we find anything for creative writing? And how we kind of, are we putting anything in place again? Is it the local authority's responsibility? Probably not. But I think for a lot of what we do in this city, I think, you know, one thing that's not unique to Newport, but certainly got an abundance of it, is humour. You know, we're a very funny breed of people. That doesn't always, I don't think, I don't think that that's an outlet for a lot of people in Newport. I think a lot of people are stifled either through lack of contact, or not lack of opportunity, just that ability to find that opportunity. And again, is that something that we're looking to build, or not even build on, but build?
Well, the Manager has a performance poetry session, I think, once a month or something like this. And there is somebody doing creative writing classes, I believe, up there as well. Now, I mean, that's only a couple of things I know about one place, so I bet it is going on in the centre.
I know.
I don't know.
I know that
I was going to respond in poem, but I can't think of anything to write.
No, but
the place offers lots of these groups do offer creative writing classes. I think it's just keeping an eye on what's on cityof.newport.co.uk for these classes as well.
Back to that destination thing again, isn't it? And knowing what's on and where it is. And
yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, points? Everybody happy? We'll formalise some recommendations if that's okay. I'm hoping Neil's going to help us with that.
Just got a few comments in relation to making scratching more accessible to the public. Current version that we got, I appreciate it's going to change the final version. It's very text heavy. Inclusion of project projections for future figures, for example, increased population.
Yeah.
Comment, Councillor Thomas, Councillor James query again about where we can store things, storage and access, tables and chairs to put events on, and how people can facilitate events. Other than that, is there any recommendations commitment point to make in regards to the report?
It was develop this sort of set of KPIs to come to the energy service reviews. Is the sort of the 1-page bit of a sort of recommendation, or is that just caught up in the first one?
Yeah.
I think it's captured.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Any other recommendations we've missed on that? Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Good debate. Thanks for your time. We're on to scrutiny advisors report now. Well, it was time to go, isn't it? I was on my way ahead.
Just like lots of more blankets.
I had to put my coat back on. I thought you were all fishing starting to leave it early.
It's a
No one's out.
Got an update, or just forward program?
Yeah, sent all the updates of the current comments recommendations that we made at the December meeting.
Yeah.
Chasing up the remaining comments as soon as I get responses from the service. Next meeting would be on Monday the 10th of March. That would be the rapid case and transition plan. Shortly,
10th of March.
That's the last thing on the program. Current, we'll be talking to head of service and director shortly to discuss items to be added on to the draft forward work program. And what we'll do, we'll send out a draft version to the committee and then discuss at the next meeting. And if there's anything else the committee feel that they would like to be added onto the work program, we can take it back and see whether, you know, if it feels that there is value of being added to the work program, we can do that.
I think, you know, my point at the last meeting, I don't think everybody was here, was that it's in our gift to drive what we want to look at. And at the moment, we're being led by officers in terms of what they want to bring to us to consult with us on. But we've got opportunities in this committee to look at other areas where we think that we can add value, that, you know, that people tell you about all the time, that your residents tell you about. This doesn't work very well, or it could be to the contrary. This works really well, you know, but normally it's things that people think could be improved, and there's opportunities to sort of look at and scrutinise. And those are the things that we can have a look at. So let's drive the debate and the things that we want to look at, rather than just waiting for statutory things to come up. Like a highways asset management plan, they've got to do it every 5 years. It's got to come to committee before it goes to cabinet. It's got to go through consultation, comes here, end of story. Which is fine, and I think we had a really good debate around it and everything else. But where are the issues that really matter to you and your residents that you want to kind of look at within our service?
Well, they love potholes.
You know,
they do love potholes.
Everybody loves a pothole, but there are other things. You know, we talked last time, didn't we, about the increase in school transport funding and the impact that was having. That came up as part of the budget, because there was a budget pressure of sort of 250,000 for our part of that service area. The sort of the wider implication for that was there's about £1.2 million pressure on additional special educational needs, children having to transfer. Yeah. The sort of the implication that we were given at the time of the meeting was that the budget was about £1.5 million. Is that what everybody understood to be? Is that right from last time? Well, actually, as I've been doing some work on alternative budget, the budget's about £9 million. I tell you what, the pressure is £1.5 million. We're spending £9 million on that. Is that the right way that we can spend the money?
There is work ongoing, because some of that may be, can I phrase it, unnecessary spend.
And those are the things that we ought to be looking at. You know,
it's not just the, I mean, the cost of these taxis backwards and forwards twice a day is absolutely phenomenal. It's unbelievable.
Active travel being quite a lot. So the department within the council, they answer the local authority of the sector, and they answer directly to the Senate. But you've got active travel, again, what do the department say? I've never come across any in Scrutiny yet, and they seem to have funding to do stuff, but they seem to be at the same time a lot of themselves what they choose to do and what they want to do it.
It's Welsh government, isn't it?
The previous report that came a couple of years ago, I think it might have been, was we returned back from COVID. We had a couple of officers here discussing active travel. I can send out to the committee just so you got some.
Yeah, so whenever I make inquiries about, you know, cycle paths or even bike tracks, everything comes back to active travel. If you want funding for that, they wouldn't fund it because it's not from A to B. It's like, well, but local teenagers can use it for their e-bikes and skateboards and all the rest of it. Yes, active travel. It seems to sit under the local authority. It seems to be a different entity, but it obviously has a big impact on.
It might be difficult for us to scrutinise it then if it's sort of external. If it's Welsh government, it is Welsh government funded, so it might be difficult for us to.
I mean, because they think that the main thing is suspense the cycle people. But actually, they seem to be very intent on getting everybody walking, which I mean, for a lot of our severely chronic disabled, you've got the most worst health profile, absolutely horrendous. Wales is probably the worst in Britain. And so we need to be thinking about this. How do you get people around who are just too far gone to be able to move around with, oh, get out and have a walk.
But you can
know.
focus on the younger generation. You can have the infrastructure, but a lot tends to
Yeah,
come
but
back to
we need money for that. wouldn't it?
Yeah,
They-
but
they're
the
in
other
charge of
thing
the purpose.
which comes up a lot at this committee is communications. So, you know, I would like us to put on the form work plan a communication strategy review. So how do we communicate with our residents? So, you know, Newport Matters recently original proposal to cut that, which has now been scrapped. That's the way we communicate. You know, can we do that differently and better? That ought to be looked at. You know, what can we send out digitally? What do we need to send out in paper? How, you know, how do we use social media, the evolving social media, TikTok, you know, emails, all the council forms, all that to me is something that we should be looking at. You know, what are all the variety of comms that we look at to get messages out to our residents, and are we effectively using that? So that's an area I would recommend we look at. But, you know, it's not my committee, it's everybody's committee. So.
Apart from the Argus.
I
I'll
suppose
talk
you
to you
can.
afterwards, it's fine. I'll tell you, who you looking for?
They use my.
Oh, they buy them off, right, okay. What's your name?
So if everybody's happy to look at comms, I'm happy to pitch that, but it's your committee, so you tell us what are the things that matter to your residents that you need us to kind of look at and understand.
I just got notes from what we made at the last meeting, that the communication strategy, the home to school transport updates on recruitment and retention, and the customer services update as well. Trying to get yearly. What the additional information on the bus service charges. So it is a lot of stuff you can still.
Is it too early to hear about the redesign of the website? We'll have another conversation about that.
I think we'll get an end of year review on it anyway, but we
It's
can have a look at it. I mean,
itself, isn't it, though? Every time you get one.
it looks like there is a lot happening on it, doesn't it, when you kind of go on there. They've improved the sort of search engine optimization, because you could, you know, I don't just get your name when I search licenses.
I'm not getting 20 inquiries on frustrated taxi drivers every week.
But, you know, please have a think about that and what it looks like, and what are the important areas that you need us to drill down to, because this is the place where you get answers here.
Social housing, is that an option, or I know it's under the Welsh Government umbrella? Do we have any?
We've got the rapid rehousing transition plan coming at the next scrutiny, so I think there'll be a number of things we can pick up as part of that. I don't think we can scrutinise social housing because we haven't got any. No, so can we scrutinise Newport City Hall? No, it's not our remit. We can only scrutinise council.
We could scrutinise the partnership working with housing options.
Yes, so we could ask.
Which is the allocation.
We could ask our housing team, you know, how are they managing the relationship with our social landlords? But that's a pretty brief agenda item, isn't it?
Against a shame a large number of complaints.
But the rules in the main chamber have been changed to invite external organisations in, and you know, I've got a group leaders meeting coming up, and I'll be suggesting that, you know, the social landlords should be invited to come and talk to us, to be honest. They've just merged with Melling Homes to become, I've forgotten the name of the new organisation. No, it's not. There's a new name. I can't remember. It's got three.
It's a Welsh name, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got 3 dots on the logo. I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
Is it a Hedron?
Yeah, something like that.
Hedron.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be. So, you know, they've got a new chief exec, new leadership team. So I think that, you know, there's opportunities there which we should be exploring as a council for kind of better partnership working. So I think let's see what comes of the rapid rehousing transition plan, and then from that we'll certainly be able to ask some questions about the role that RSLs play in helping us to deliver housing across the city, and then we can go from there, can't we? Is that okay?
Yeah, good. Yeah, all good.
The only other thing we've got then is the minutes of the previous meetings from the 16th and 22nd of January. There was an error on there where the system had combined the minutes, I think. So Neil resent them around earlier today, and the updated version is online. Any queries beyond those, or are you happy to agree them as a true record?
Sorry.
Fab, no problem at all. That's okay, no objections, so meeting done. Lovely.
Stop recording, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks all.